We'll get started here in just a second. We'll get Marco up on stage. We'll wait for Jack Alfonso to calm down with the emojis in the crowd. A little out of hand here. But give us just 1 second to get started, and we'll get fired up in like a minute.
God damn it, Jack.
All right, guys, we'll get it popped off. We got a couple people in here. So basically, our idea today is to talk about the Heat at the midway point, kind of a midterm progress report. If you're thinking about it in a school setting, see who's getting A's, B's, who needs to get a little bit more tutoring. We're 41 games in. Tonight will be game 42. So Marco had a good idea with this, and we're jumping on it. So we're doing this at lunch. So first of all, if you're not following my guy Marco Romo, make sure you're following my guy, and he's my co-host. So Marco, say what's up to everybody.
Woo! What's up, everybody? Halfway point. Can you believe it?
Yeah, it seems like the season has been going on for a long time, but it also doesn't feel like it should be the halfway point. I think that's kind of surprising in a way.
Especially
But
with all the injuries and stuff, it's kind of felt like that would have slowed everything down. But I guess time kind of flies when you're having fun.
that's true too. So we're gonna go right down a list. Marco and I have conferred. We've spent hours upon hours grading papers, exams. Looking back at film. We literally haven't done anything in our lives in days to get ready for this midterm progress report. And so we're really going to start kind of at the bottom of the roster, talking about, the Kyle guys and Marcus Garrett's, and work our way up to sort of our stars. We're going to throw some polls up on stage so you guys can participate and vote. And you can also request to jump on stage. So we'll kind of guide the conversation, but we'll definitely allow you guys to participate too, because that's the fun part about doing this at our half times and whatnot. So Marco, let's start with Kyle Guy. I'm going to throw the poll up there. So maybe talk about what you think about Kyle Guy, and we'll go kind of quick with these guys.
Yeah, these guys will be a lot quicker, as quick as the 10 days, which is what Kyle Guy is. For Kyle, I'm going to give him a solid B because they've asked him to be just a guy who moves around screens, come off of pin downs, come off of curls and stuff like that, and just shoot. And he's made his shots, and that's all they've asked for him, and he's done perfectly acceptable at what they've asked him to be. He's not, trying to do too much, and I think Kyle also knows that. He knows he's trying to play for another NBA contract elsewhere. I don't think he's going to sign in Miami again after this 10-day comes up. Miami would love to, but I think they have way too many white guys right now, uh, and too many guys of his kind of skill set. So I'll give him a solid B, though.
So I want to ask a question, because obviously when we're grading this, so that we're on the same page, are we grading this based on looking at what they did, or like relative to expectations? Like
I
Kyle Guy
think
walks in. Go ahead.
no, I think that's what I took it. I took it as relative to expectations for
Okay.
some players.
Yeah, because like obviously, like if you're giving Kyle Guy a B, and you give, let's say we gave PJ Tucker a B, the B's are
Mhm.
not the same. Like, but I
Yeah.
think in comparative to their expectation, like Kyle Guy had 0. He came in the classroom, his shoes weren't tied, and we got an A out of him. Compared to what we were getting. So, all right, so we're on the same page with that. So I went with Kyle Guy with a C. And I think I might end up being a little bit more difficult grader in this, but he stepped in, he did good things. I think in a way we've sort of overrated or overhyped what he's done. He stepped in, made baskets, filled in when we needed him, but I think also relative, even though his expectations were pretty low, I think that he's kind of just that average player, and that's why I went with a C. He's got some potential, but I think his ceiling is somewhat limited. So that's where I went with that. Jack, you want to chime in with Kyle Guy? Got a strong opinion on him?
I don't know if I have a strong opinion on him. I think y'all are both on the money. Like, maybe a B minus, C plus. Like, he did his job. He did what they asked him to do. Now, like, maybe where I differ from some people is I feel like there was kind of a panic after he had a couple of nice games where they were like, how are they going to keep him on the team? How are they going to convert his contract and stuff like that? I don't think it's that serious. he's like a nice player. He's a fun player to watch. I was excited when they signed him because he showed out for the Kings. He makes cool shots, but like beyond that, it's he's only on the team because of hardship and stuff. So he does his job. He doesn't do anything more, doesn't do anything less. I'm not mad at him, but I'm also not like clamoring for them to like move heaven and earth to make sure he stays on the team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's keep it moving to Marcus Garrett. So a guy that sometimes gets put into that pick one or the other situation that we like to do on Heat Twitter. Marco, what do you got from Marcus Garrett?
I think I'm with the majority of the audience right now. I'm with a C. I guess kind of a C minus, but relative to expectations, I'd probably put C plus kind of a range. But yeah, I'm probably gonna stick with just a C because you haven't seen a lot of him. He's been playing the Gabe role that Gabe played last year. The guy that just comes off the bench to be a defensive, kind of menace. And you just hope that he develops on these other kind of offensive tendencies that he has. He's still not a great finisher. He really can't get to the rim that well. Although he does show flashes, that was what Gabe kind of showed last year. But I think Gabe was a better player at that point as well. So I'm not gonna, give him too much flack about, not being even Gabe right now. But I think I see is fine for what he's been, and he's kind of Briante Weber at this point, and Briante Weber was always just a C kind of G League guy. So that's pretty much what Marcus is. And, he still has a lot of room to grow. And I'm not going to give him, too much of a bad grade so far this year.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I went CC minus. It was, he's shown great ability on the defensive end. He can pressure the hell out of the ball. His holes are obviously on the offensive end. And it's kind of a flip of Kyle Guy where he's shown flashes on offense and his holes are on defense. And I think ultimately if the Heat have to choose between the two, it's which side do they feel like they can more easily develop into an NBA style player? Because right now they both have such big gaps that's why they can't, get on the floor for an NBA team. And they're obviously so young, and Marcus especially being his first year out of college. So while he hasn't contributed a lot, I think a CC minus with potential. After next summer, going to Vegas again, having another year in the system, he could develop into a guy that like a Gabe Vincent, like you said, that can play a role for this. So. Looking at the polls, I know we're trying to get you guys to participate also. Everyone for Marcus Garrett, we're out 63% for a C, 23% for a D or an F. So we got some tough people out there. And looking back at Kyle Guy, 50% for a B, 37% A, 13% C. So pretty much right in line with what we've been talking about. Let's keep it moving to one of the favorite players of Heat, almost traded 6 billion times, KZ Akpala, who has reemerged as a small ball five. Marco, what do you think about KZ?
Relative to expectations, I might even give KZ a B here, but I think I'll stick with just a C plus because we thought he was unplayable. Looking at Summer League, he was legitimately at times the worst player on the court with Summer League guys out there, and he was never like he never gave you kind of like a spot or a spark that you would say, oh, he's going to be at least okay in the regular season. So the fact that he's just been kind of okay-ish when he's out there and not a detriment, unlike Chris Silva. I've actually been clamoring for KZ small ball 5 minutes when Silva has been there, and KZ got injured, which is kind of sucks for him because he was really starting to turn a corner in terms of just being a serviceable guy. So I hope he I think it's a wrist injury, so I hope he heals with that. And yeah, I think relative to expectations, I could go with B, but I think I'm gonna stick with a C plus right now because KZ, you've done enough to warrant yourself at least the roster spot in the league. Whether that's with Miami in the future or not remains to be seen. But I think he's done enough to warrant at least a C plus.
Yeah, I went with a C. I think relative to what we expected out of him, he did show enough that he's not in that DF range that we probably would have given him for the past few years. If we're comparing anything to Chris Silva, I've sent him to alternative school. Like, he is not getting a grade. I kicked him out of class. He has to sit with the principal. I can't have him getting any grades in this midterm progress report. So I went KZ with a C. He's I hate to say he's showing flashes because it's now year 3 or year 4. It's kind of beyond that part, and I don't necessarily really desire to have him around after this year still, but at least you're starting to see some positives out of him on the basketball court. So, Heath Leifer, do you want to jump in on any of those guys? So far, we've talked about Kyle Guy, Marcus Garrett, and KZ Akpala.
Yeah, well, Kyle Guy for me was the player that we needed when we had nobody, and put on that great performance, and it's kind of clouded people's judgment on who should really start, so who should really play behind our starters, things like that. It hasn't changed really. Vincent's probably most definitely the long term option there. So he gets a B minus in my book. Marcus Garrett, to be averaging 10 minutes and shoot 28% from the field and 25 from the three. It's obviously he's got massive holes in his game. He's very young. He's a prospect if I've ever seen one. He gets a C minus in my opinion, maybe a D plus. But Akpala is one of those players where for so long we've had such high expectations of him, and it just diminished over year, season by season, to expect nothing from him. So for him to do what he did this year when he was available, he still had his flashes of being, useless, but to do what he was doing before he got injured, which was be a solid, small ball center, be able to shoot a little bit. It's nice to have. He gets a C plus, but yeah, I'm not clamoring to get him back on a deal. Maybe anything bigger than a year and a half, but it's 2 year deal. It sounds good to me for like $8 million. But if he wants more, then I wouldn't be crying to see him walk.
I would even be hesitant to give him that kind of deal. I think he's probably warranted, like, because Caleb Martin only was able to get a two-way deal this past summer. So it's going to be hard out there for KZ to really get a deal. Miami might bring him back on like a minimum kind of deal, but that's kind of unheard of for a guy, who was a rookie and who was traded. I think they traded 3 second-round picks or whatever it was. But I think Miami's going to have to swallow that pill.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's keep it moving to Markeith Morris. So this is a guy that, obviously has been out for quite a long time, with the injury after the Joker incident. And so it's tough to give him a grade because he has missed a lot of our games, has been gone really for almost 2 months now. So, Marco, what did you say about Markeith in context to his injury?
Yeah, I would kind of put this as an incomplete / B minus, relative to expectations. As we keep saying here, because I'm gonna have to reiterate that, because some guys are also gonna get Bs that might not be on the same caliber as player as Markeith. But I thought he was gonna be, useless this season. I really didn't believe in the signing they did with him. I was like, I know it's a veteran minimum deal. There's no downside to it. You can probably replace his minutes very easily, which they've already shown that they can. But the fact that he was part of a lot of their bench lineups that kind of killed teams, him, Tyler, and Dedmon, and sometimes they went small. His versatility was really not something I saw, coming into play this season. I was really surprised that he was as good as he was when he did play. He's still not a great, 3-point shooter, but Spoelstra's not letting him just be a 3-point shooter. He's operating in that short roll game, the mid post area. He's kind of learned to be more of a team guy. You still get the occasional ball stoppage, but that's fine with what he is. He's a veteran minimum guy that played his role for the short time that he was on the floor. So I think I'll stick with like a B minus for now. But it's incomplete because of how many games he's played, and I'm not going to blame him on that because we all know what happened there. We don't have to regurgitate that talk.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for us if we're giving discounting people's grade because of injury, because you're going to get into that with basically everybody throughout the list has missed some time. So we'll keep it kind of focused on when they were on the floor. And I think relative to what we expected out of him, you said a B minus, I said a C plus. I think it's hard for people to remember back to when he was on the floor. He was good for us. He was part of very good lineups. Those 5-man lineups of Markeith were good. And he gives you something that's kind of a different element than what Dedmon brings, what Bam brings, even now what Omer brings. And if he can get back healthy, if that ever happens, I think he's going to be part of the playoff rotation in certain situations. Jack, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I think I agree with both of y'all. I would give him a higher grade. I'd give him an A minus to a B plus. I just think maybe Marco agreed with me on this preseason. I had sub-zero expectations for him. He was not a good player the year before. Really has not had the most wonderful NBA career. But yeah, he's been in a lot of the Heat's best lineups. I think he's certainly in the playoff rotation if healthy. I think what he did to Jokic was very cool. And, I'm bumping up his grade a little bit because of the Nuggets game. I'm sorry. In all seriousness, he's impressed me a ton. So I think I give him points because relative to expectations, he's kind of blown me away. Like, I thought that was kind of a bad signing by Miami. Not necessarily like a high risk signing. Obviously, the contract's good, but I just didn't think he'd be a great rotation player. And it was one of my main concerns about the Heat going into the season, that their 4 rotation was really weak because Keith is just not a very good player. But I've been totally proven wrong on that. When healthy, he's been wonderful. Obviously not an elite 3-point shooter, but does a bunch of little things that Marco commented on. So, yeah, I'm all for Keith. I hope we get him back soon. And I hope, they maybe run into the Nuggets again in the future.
Yeah, looking at the fan polls, 13% A, 35% B, 30% C, 22% D or F. So right in that B or C range, which is where really all of us were. We were in that B plus down to C plus range. So as we are going through this, we're going to move into Omer next, which is a popular person. You guys, you can request to get on stage. We'll definitely include people if you want to make comments about certain players or rip apart our assessments, criticize us as teachers. That's fine. We're just doing our best to make these grades. So Jay, I see you jumped on stage, one of the guys that comes in every time at halftime. Jay, what do you think so far? What do you want to say about some of these guys?
I mean, I think everything you guys were saying was pretty on point. I was just gonna go off of Morris for a second. It's interesting. If I recall correctly, a few days ago they announced something about that the Clippers are going to be pretty much doing a whole garage sale of players, and I know his brother plays for them. If I recall correctly, it would be very interesting to see if Miami calls them up. For something. Just saying, it would be kind of cool to have a 1-2 punch of twins on the roster.
What's funny about that is I think Miami has, talked to Marcus before, and they do love circling back to guys, but I don't know what kind of deal that would be. I don't really see a deal there, but Miami always circles back to guys, as I think our man Lefty Life always talks about. So I wouldn't put it out the realm of possibility, but I still don't see it very likely.
All right, so let's move it into the man, Omer Yurtseven. Looking early on, we've got about 25 votes, mostly all A's and B's, 52% B's. What do you think, Marco, with the man, the myth, the legend, breaking records set by Shaq 20 years ago, just changing the game in Miami? What do you think about Omer?
I think I might. I was going to give him an A, but I think that's probably a little high. I'll give him a B minus as well, because I saw him at Summer League. I saw the flashes and all that stuff, and I think we all did, and we all were like, he could be, Bam's backup or future backup, and that's what he looked like. He's looked like he could be Bam's future backup, and he's going to be slotting into that role probably relatively easily, unless he gets included in a deal. He's also, you know, made himself into a guy that can be included as a sweetener. So watch out for that maybe. But I think he's done so many things that even I didn't see at Summer League in terms of the passing, because they were asking him to be mostly a scorer in Summer League. That's the thing that he loved to do. They love to get a guy to do things he's normally not going to do during the regular season. They had Bam doing a lot of ball handling when he was not doing that during his first 2 years, and that paid off during his future development. So I think Omer is he's warranted to be minus because of he's a rookie, and rookies are normally bad, and he's been bad, but he hasn't been terrible when he's out there on defense, and offensively I think he's done good enough stuff, off ball screening, passing, offensive rebounds. I think that stuff kind of negates all the defensive lapses he's had, especially for a guy. He was only supposed to be your third string center, so he slotted in as a starting center like seamlessly, and I'm gonna give him B minus because he's done enough to warrant some kind of new contract, whether it's with Miami or somewhere else whenever this one's up. But there's still a lot of time left in between that. So you never know, stuff could go wrong. But right now, I think he's earned the B minus.
Yeah, I also had a B minus. I think if you just consider the fact that he was our third string center, like you said initially, like you give him an A. Like you would never have expected, except for some of the people on Heat Twitter, the Daryl type people that think Omer is the next Hall of Fame center, George Mikan. But like he has kept us afloat, and it's a collective thing. And I think the words that we keep saying is like, according to expectations or compared to our expectations, how many of these guys exceeded expectations? And that's why we've stayed afloat when all of these guys have been missing time, because of the exceeding expectations of multiple players. That's why we're staying, on top and what, a game out of second or a game out of first. I mean, that's huge. So I went B minus. I'm curious if Jack or Jay, if you got anything on Omer.
I mean, I pretty much agree with all of you. I think he's impressed relative to my expectations. I think everybody saw promise there and kind of pointed at him early as one of those guys that, the Heat find kind of out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he's a rotation player. But I don't think anybody expected this outside of, like you said, a marginal few who think he's the next George Mikan. I've been impressed with him, and I think like the numbers bear that out. It's a collective effort, but the fact that the Omer Yurtseven Heat have like the second net rating in the NBA is like, how can you not give him at least a B plus? I think he's still firmly the third best center on this roster, which isn't an insult to him. I just think Dedmon is, probably in my mind like the second best or the best backup big in the NBA right now, and I think Bam is obviously Bam. But yeah, I kind of hope they don't commit to him long term. That's my perspective right now. I hope maybe they look to deal him, use him as sweetener, but anything is gravy at this point because they didn't give up anything for him.
And he's already on the Gabe Vincent 2-year. I think 2-year deal, right? I forget what kind of deal he signed.
Yeah, I think it's through next season. So it's again one of those type of dunk in. These guys that they identify, go out and get them at the end of the season when everybody else is thinking about summertime, and we grab that deal, and it's huge because it's allowing us to work on the margins when we don't have a lot of flexibility with our roster with draft picks and things like that. I think it's Tony on the Biscayne Bay account. Go ahead.
Yeah, to what Jack just said, I obviously think Omer is a great sweetener for a lot of teams, right? A 7-foot offensively rebounding gifted center is something that everybody would like to have on their team. I think that Miami seriously has to consider keeping the asset though, as they start to play into these next couple years where a lot of their assets are going to be allocated into 4-5 guys. Having players with the control of their contract like Omer is super, super, super important. The Max Struses, the Omers, the Gabe Vincents, dudes with bird rights and restricted free agencies are going to be a premium for us. And obviously, you capitalize on winning windows when you have them. But you do have to weigh a lot of that into effect, like when you're trying to roster build and team build throughout the season. And in my mind, I just like how this team's competing. I don't know what kind of pieces I'm going all in for with Omer as a sweetener. If the deal presents itself, they're obviously going to take it. But I just wanted to kind of throw that in there.
Jay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think Omer, first off, I think he deserves an A, mainly because of the fact that he's our third stringer and the amount of beyond effort, confidence, all of it. He was learning day by day pretty much. And to be honest, to me, that's exciting for someone at his caliber. But as far as having him as a sweetener is the only thing that's kind of weird for me is because contract wise, I mean, I saw something that Bobby Marks was talking about or something like that, but I want to say it was the amount of when Tyler Hero has his max deal coming up. I guess he could do it next year, or so I can think end of July or before the season starts, whatever it is. That's gonna be some scary ass shit. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It's a matter of Victor Oladipo. If he plays good, then you got to think about him. You got Gabe Vincent. They're gonna be hell over the actual tax, and it's gonna be insane. So that's why, like, if you're thinking about Omier and thinking about all those things, I guess you might want to start thinking about even Max Struess. These are a lot of people that are about to get paid, man. So, I don't know. It's scary hours for me after the season.
But also, you don't want to fall in love with your guys too much. I think Tiffany Meeks of Heat Beats said this. You have this ability to churn out guys, so you don't want to fall in love with the guys that you churned out already, because you've proven that you can take some of these undrafted guys and you can find the market inefficiencies and exploit them. So you don't you don't want to let go of guys, too early. Might be some people's mindset, but you also have to think about, the guys that are making the larger salaries, like the Bams, like the Jimmies, when their contracts eventually come up, then you can, replenish your pool of assets then.
Well, see, the only problem with that is that I'm kind of scared with how we sort of run it from time to time. Just if Dion and Hassan, and it's just saying their names hurt my soul a little bit. But sometimes it's just the amount of money that we give them from time to time when they have an explosive year scares me. And I think that's the reason why I'm kind of scared of Tyler Hero's contract coming up. I get, yes, you should pay him, but at the same time, it's just like, well, damn. Bradley Beal is not even making that much money.
Yeah, I completely see where that kind of fear would come from, and I think Miami's probably learned that lesson at this point. But as Pat Riley says, there are obstacles, and then there are no obstacles. So you'll cross those bridges, when they come to it.
I saw Adam perk up in the listener pool when somebody mentioned the Tyler Hero contract. I know we can't wait to give Tyler Hero the max.
Appreciate Jack setting the bait. We'll wait for Adam or not Adam's request to jump on stage when that happens. To Marco's point and Jay's point, it's also, while it's scary hours, it's also a blessing that we have all these guys that you're like, man, how are we going to pay them? Because it could be the opposite. It could be we have a bunch of bums on the bench that you don't want to pay. And we've been through that too. So while it is scary, you can't retain everybody. You got to figure out how to manage assets. And I think Marco makes a good point, not falling in love because you know that you can go get the next one. You can go find the next person. You can find them undrafted in the rarest places. So that's a credit to our Heat front office and scouting staff. So one of those guys that, 30 years ago was one of those discovered gems, Udonis Haslam. So we got him on the poll. It's been up for a little while, 60 votes. And I'm glad because 67% of the people have given him an A. And if you've given him any less than an A, if you're one of those 33% that didn't, you don't have Heat culture. And so I would ask you to leave the room, please. So, Marco, what do you think about Udonis Haslam? I gave him an A. So what do you think?
I'm giving him a straight F. I'm just kidding. For realistically, you'd probably give UD probably a C plus. If you're a fan outside looking in, maybe even not that. You probably not even think who he's still on the team. But if you're kind of trying to be a subjective Heat fan, I think C plus or even B minus because the minutes he's given out there have been like legitimately good center minutes. And I didn't expect that from Udonis. I saw him even last year. He was having trouble kind of running up and down the court, but then you saw him in that Philadelphia game. He had those good bursts of energy, and he's still doing that at his, I think, 48, however old Udonis is at this point. But this was a frustrating thing last year as well when all those injuries were piling up. Why didn't you use Udonis if he was still, kind of at least the serviceable third string back small ball five? People forget Udonis started his career as a four. I think in college, I think he even played some 3 minutes, but I don't know. I can't remember back that far enough. But I think for a guy who, just like Omer, he was your fourth string probably center, and he still, put up decent, minutes out there. And for Udonis, that's all he can give at this point of his career. And I'm really proud of him, and I'm really glad that Eric Spoelstra started to use him more. And I'm not gonna hope he stays in the rotation, but I hope he still gets maybe a game or two here to kind of show everybody that yes, I still belonged in the league, even though I was around for 20 years. I wasn't just a guy who was a coach and I'm glad he's shown that this year, and I'm very happy for him. But as a Heat fan, I'll give him an A+ because all day.
Yeah, and in addition to those Philadelphia minutes, when he played, it was against Detroit where we were shorthanded. He came in, played late, got the game-winning rebound. Like his quantity of value has been pretty low this year, which is expected. But like when he's been on the floor, he has been pretty good. And I would agree with that C+ grade. But we got to keep it real. We got to give him an A. Anyone want to chime in on Udonis before we move into Gabe Vincent? Yeah, that's a drop the mic. Nobody wants to comment on Udonis because if you disrespect him, you're going to basically get canceled in here. So we'll move it to Gabe Vincent. Stepped in as the backup point guard, has started quite a few games. Marco, what'd you get for Gabe?
I mean, I'm going to give Gabe an A-. I think this is the first A grade I've given so far. But Gabe has been perfect for what they've asked him. And I was one of those people that was questioning, early on in the season. I was like, are we sure Gabe can be this backup point, this backup, two small, pretty much small shooting guard? We all expected him to be better than what he was at that point. But then, you got to give these guys time. You got to trust this Heat development staff. That shot came around after, I think it was game 15, which makes sense. I think that's around the time that he started getting more minutes. And I've really been really surprised at, how far he's come. He was always going to give you the defense. He was always going to give you kind of that all ball pressure, but he started giving you more offense, more downhill kind of juice. And he's been showing those flashes more and more. And where those flashes aren't, those aren't just flashes. They are who he is now. So I'm going to give him an A because I don't know if any of us expected him to be what he is right now, except maybe a few people that are probably smarter than we are. Shout out to Shaban. But I think I'm going to give him an A because he's been perfect to what they've asked him. He's been the Victor Oladipo before Victor Oladipo was going to come back. So I'm very proud of what Gabe's been able to do this year.
And you set up that transition perfectly because one of those people that was smarter than us, that was on the Gabe Vincent train before anybody. Gad, what you got on Gabe?
I'm very happy that Marco is handing out an A to Gabe. Just want to make sure that my guy gets his respect. Can you guys hear me? I'm driving right now. I just had to pop in. You guys been doing a great job, by the way. Is there any background noise? Are we good?
You're good.
You're good.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I love everything that Gabe has been able to give us this year. Honestly, it's been fantastic. Once the shot came around, he's turned into almost a completely different player. The secondary playmaking is there. He plays really well off of Kyle Lowry. And when you look at the data defensively, although defense isn't like the end-all, be-all defensive ratings and all that, we're so much better with Gabe on the floor defensively. I think he has the highest defense or the best defensive rating on this team of players that have played like substantial rotational minutes. He's one hell of a player, and it's been really fun to watch him play. I'll give him an A. I have been really high on him, did not expect him to be this good. He's been a really solid backup point guard, and that's something that this team was probably one of the biggest question marks going into the year. So having him do that job has been fantastic. Like, if for some reason Victor Oladipo doesn't work out, between Gabe and maybe a couple spot minutes from Caleb and whatever, you still feel pretty set at that spot to replicate what Victor Oladipo should be, because he's really just Gabe and Caleb put together. So,
yeah, and so far, looking at the poll, people agree with us. 66% A, 32% B. So 98% A or B. Just imagine if you would have said in August or last season that at this point in the season, Gabe Vincent would be an A-type player or even a B-type player for us. You wouldn't have expected that. Let me go to Jack and then Heat Lifer. Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I do just want to, Marco touched on it. Y'all touched on it. I want to give credit to Gad. I really want to give credit to Siobhan Beslow. I know I'm a Heat Beat homer, but she's been on the Gabe train since day one, as have a few other people, some of them speaking in this chat. But yeah, I just think he's such a great piece for the Heat to have going forward because they don't really have point of attack defenders like him outside of, Lowry, who is aging and, will need to come off the floor at some point. So, like, when your backups are Tyler Hero, Max Strus, et cetera, who, as much as I love all of them, are not exactly the guy who are going to lock up your opposing point guard on a night-to-night basis. It's just a blessing. Like Gad said, if Depot can't come back, you have an option there. Of all the people who have emerged this year unexpectedly between the Yurts and the Caleb Martins and stuff, I think he's the most helpful for the Heat going forward in terms of their title aspirations this year. And I'm so glad the shooting's come back. I mean, I think anybody who watched him at all in the G League or, before he joined the Heat knew the shooting was going to come back at some point because he was just putrid until like game 15 or so. Yeah, he's just a really complete player. He continues to add things to his game. I think he's kind of like a Duncan or so, not in terms of like quality of player or type of player, but in the fact that he's like constantly adding subtle improvements to his game, which I think bodes well for his long-term career with the Heat or anywhere else.
Yeah, all great points there. I don't know if I shared, but I'm going to go B+ for him. And I think Marco and Jack both made great points about, his impact. And when he came back in that last game against Atlanta, like you felt his impact. He had meaningful minutes. And that's not something that you felt last year. You felt them the other way. They were bad minutes that were hurting us. And so it's great to see his growth. Heat Lifer, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a solid A for our personal Philadelphia 76er killer himself. The best Afro I've ever seen in my entire life as well. He's been the perfect person in the right place at the right time. His progression has gotten to a point where he can create his own shot, and that was so important for us when we started hitting those massive injury and COVID streaks. He was perfect, and you can't give him anything less than an A. Defensively, he's sound as well, and we needed him more than ever, and he's proven that he can do everything. You guys have said it all anyway, so I'm not going to go on about how good he's actually, how good he's been and blah blah blah. But he is one of those players that Jay was talking about before. It's going to be a very hard look at the organization when they're going to have to pay players because he's going to want a certain size contract relative to how he's been playing. Same with Strus, same with Hero, players like that. It's going to be a tough call for the organization when that time comes around. It's scary, but for now, let's enjoy it. And yeah, he's playing phenomenal.
Ben Tovia, thanks for coming in. What do you got to say?
Hey, yeah, sorry I came in earlier and dropped. My phone was giving me some problems. But no, with Gabe, I think just the biggest thing for me is that he is a guy who, since the moment we saw him last season, and even the year before in the very limited minutes we saw him in, is a guy that always just exuded maximum effort. And those are guys who are going to stick in Miami always, no matter what. If you show maximum effort, you're going to get minutes at some point. And just the fact that everything around that has started to round into form, has started to kind of develop to a point where he's become a really positive player. The shot is there, his ball handling, his just the defense. That he's a guy who I have a hard time believing that they're going to let go of easily, just because he does everything in the quote unquote Heat way, however you wanna look at that. And I don't know. I'm a big fan of everything Gabe Vincent has been doing this year.
Yeah, Gad, do you want to jump back on? I saw your mic. Come on.
Ben made a fantastic point with the effort. He is unbelievable with that effort, and it's been a big reason why he's been able to stick. So I definitely agree. One thing that I wanted to point out, which is just the little things with Gabe, is kind of the reason why I love him as a player, and I have for quite a while, is next time you watch him play, his overall physicality on defense is something that you don't get very often from those undersized guards. It's almost PJ Tucker-esque, where he's not afraid of any matchup. If he switches and he gets onto a big, watch him fight for a position. He will fight to try to make it as hard as possible for that mismatch, for that ball to get there. So just those little things with him, I love pointing them out because it's beautiful to watch Gabe play basketball. But yeah, great points by Ben. I totally agree with everything he said, and I'm happy he's getting respect. Seems like Heat Nation is really loving Gabe Vincent right now. It's a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Anyone else on Gabe Vincent before we move it into Dwayne Dedman? All right, we'll swing it over to Marco. So, Marco, what did you have for Dwayne Dedmon? I just put the poll up on the top. If anybody wants to vote on that, Marco, go ahead.
Dwayne's been the same guy that he was last year, which is to say the perfect backup big. He's the perfect change of pace big. So I'm gonna give a second straight A here because, like I said, Dwayne's been the perfect backup five, and he's been excellent in his role. I guess you could say A minus because he gets about 1 3 second call on him every game, it seems. But other than that, he's been pretty much perfect for what they've wanted out of him. He's going to stay the backup center once Bam comes back. That may kind of hurt for some people to hear, considering how well Omer's played. But I think Dwayne's got that backup five kind of locked down. And whenever they go small, they're probably going to go with like Keith if he comes back, or with the Caleb Martin even maybe as a small ball five. But I don't expect that to happen. But for now, yeah, Dwayne's been perfect. He's the same guy that he was last year. His finishing isn't as good, but last year I think he was one of the best finishers in the league around the rim, which is kind of insane. But he's still giving you everything you want out of him. His screens are still like punishing and kind of free up guys, and those kind of go underrated. Him and Bam are two of the best screeners in the league, and you have both of them in your rotation, so it's perfect for the kind of offense they want to run as well. He still has great chemistry with Jimmy Butler. It's one of my favorite things. Him and Tyler Hero have the two best bench two-man lineups in the league. It's they're those two have killed opposing benches, and I think once the team is fully healthy, you're going to see those numbers stay like that because Dwayne's a plug and play as they come, and he's been perfect for them, and yeah, he's been a solid A for me.
Yeah, I was thinking B plus. He's just consistent, and I think that's the best thing about him. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's not going to give you these flashy stats. He just goes in and does his work. And some of the work he does, like Marco said, is those screens that don't get noticed in the box score. If you don't watch the game, if you're not paying attention to the offensive movement, you're not going to see that. But it was good to see, like last week, Duncan recognized PJ for how, or sorry, it was Spruce that recognized PJ for how he sets screens that gets him open shots. And I think Dedmon is a big part of that also. So I went with a B. So anyone else want to jump on and talk about Dwayne Dedmon? The poll right now is 62% B, 35% A, which is pretty what I expected. And if anybody wants to jump on, go ahead.
If I may,
go for it.
Yeah, I think I just kind of echo a lot of what you guys both said. I think Dedmon's consistency is his biggest strength. Like Marco really said, he's the same guy he was last year, and that is exactly what they needed him to be. And that's, he has potential to have these big games against some of these other teams. We saw him against Brooklyn earlier this season, I think had a double-double off the bench. But just every night he does, the same stuff. The screens, like, I love watching him going to set screens because he's like sprinting into it. He is very enthusiastic about setting those screens, the rolling. Like he's a very smart pick and roll player. Just knows how to establish his position, knows where to be at the right time. And it's refreshing, honestly, just to have a backup center who, you're not kind of like, oh, we got to wait until Bam comes back in. Like, just to have a guy who you can kind of count on night in and night out.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Heat Lifer, did you want to come on and talk about Dedmon?
Yeah, sorry, my phone went to 15%, so I just cut myself out of that. But no, he's been perfect for us for the role that we needed him to play. He showed it last year, even in the horrible playoffs that we had, that he was still capable of making some sort of difference, a little bit of a difference, which is good. His shooting is good enough for a big. Whenever he has to take that three, he can. I was more looking towards the fight between him and Yurtseven long term over who's going to be that for the rest of the season. Who's going to be that backup big? I still think Dedmon takes that role. More defensive minded, comes on. It's more of a fit for Spoelstra's system. It's I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see who he goes with deeper into the playoffs as well. If you're even going to see the floor at all, if we're healthy, hopefully we're healthy. But yeah, solid A minus, A plus for him.
Yeah, I think your last point about the minutes coming back and being able to keep him around long term. I think in the short term, I think he's the solution. I think once Bam comes back, it's going to be Dedmon's minutes behind him, and that's not a discount to Omer and what he's done, but we're a winning championship contender, and you're not messing around with rookies who are a little bit more questionable. And because of the way that Dedmon plays this summer, he's gonna have a market. He's a very attractive guy for any team that's trying to have a win now backup center. He's not a starter on a good team, so there's going to be teams that want him. And if he does decide to go somewhere else for more money or more years, you can't blame him. Like, he has earned his way back into a kind of predominant spot in the league as a backup center. And then that's when you can slide Omer into this, backup spot behind Bam next year. So we're covered in a lot of different ways, which is a great thing to do. Let's move it over to Max Strus. So it's our next guy. I got the poll up there if you want to vote in that. Early on, it looks like 80% A, 17% B. Marco, what did you do for Max Strus, not Marco Strus?
Damn. I wish I could shoot like that. I kind of wavered on this. I think either A minus or B plus is where I lean, but I think I'll probably stick with the A minus because, again, relative to what we were kind of expecting this year. But then again, you think about how I think some of us were expecting Max to be at least, a 40% guy on 4 or 5 attempts a game at best. But I don't think we expected, the kind of shot making he's had so far this year and in the role that he's played as well, because I think we expected him to play maybe a maximum of like 10 to 15 minutes, but he's constantly played well over that and closed some games here and there. But again, that might have to do with rotations and who's been hottest, and he's been the hottest kind of shooter out there. So Spoelstra always likes to go with the hot hand and with the guys who are doing the best at a certain moment in the fourth quarter, and he loves closing with those kind of guys. But his defense is also an issue, and that's probably where my minus comes from. He still, tries hard, but he just has a lot of physical limitations for a guy, like him. And it makes sense, the way that he kind of closes out on guys is way too hard. But in my preview this year with PD Webb, we did a prospect video thing on Twitch where we were looking at, the kind of things he was improving on. His handle, his ability to be able to get downhill, which is kind of surprising again. We saw a little bit of that last year, but I think he has more of that kind of, downhill ability than I think most of us expected. It's been a nice plus, but those pin downs, he comes off of pin downs like a madman. That man is moving around like every second on the court. He's like JJ Redick in that kind of way where he never stops moving. And in this type of offense that Miami's running, that's perfect. But again, that I don't expect him to close a lot of games. I don't even expect him to kind of have a spot in the playoffs because the playoffs is a totally different game. But, for the regular season, he's the perfect kind of innings eater, and you need that type of guy. And Miami's just glad that he's worked out as well as he has.
Let's send it. I think Jack had his hand up first. So, Max Strus, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Marco said. I think, as we've said, what's the most common phrase we've used in the spaces so far, like relative to expectations? And I think, Marco touched on it. Everybody's expectations for Duncan or for Max Strus were super high, I feel like, coming into this season. People were expecting them to find another Duncan. And, he's not Duncan Robinson. That's an unfair expectation to hold any undrafted rookie to any NBA player, really. But, he's been incredible. I think, like, even the high expectations, people are still giving him an A. A minus is where I'd have him at. The defense isn't there. I do agree partially with Marco that I don't know if he makes, like, the 8-man playoff rotation. But I do think, there will be 1 or 2 games that he wins for them in the playoffs. I think, like, he's a perfect
Like
guy that they can kind of plug in and play. And then if everybody's cold, he hits, like, 2-3 threes, and like it's just incredible to have a guy like that at the end of your projected playoff rotation. So yeah, just huge win by the Heat to find a guy like that again.
Yeah, I agree with Jack's last point there. The other morning I was on with Ethan, and if you make it simple, there's 48 minutes at that position, and if you're let's say you divide it 24-24 with Duncan and Max, and I know that's not how simple it would be, but the hot hand gets more minutes. And so on a game-by-game basis, whoever's making shots, whoever's playing better, you get more minutes. And as an athlete, I don't understand how either of them could be upset with that. You have the opportunity to play more, and it's not that they're competing against each other, but for the team aspect, if Duncan's not making shots and Max is, give him more minutes. And on the next night, if Duncan's making shots and Max isn't, give him more minutes. Like, that's a blessing to have as a team, I think. Jay, go ahead.
I just want the drugs that y'all have to even fathom not even thinking about putting him in an 8-guard lineup as far as in the playoffs. How? I mean, this man single-handedly is doing shit that Duncan Robinson was doing, right, a year ago, and is doing it at a consistent rate where Duncan should be doing it, what he's not. For me, I look at it as it's about what have you done for me lately? And Max Strus has been doing it for us lately. And to give the man his respect, giving him an A+ is what he deserves. I get about the defense or whatever, but fuck, we need offense. And that's part of the reason why he's on the squad right now. Part of the reason why we've been losing a few games when we lost a lot of people with Duncan or Max or whatever is because we didn't have Max, which is crazy that we're saying that now in 40 games in, that if we would have had Max Strus in certain games, we probably would have won them because he would have hit some threes for us. To say that he's not going to be in that 8-man rotation in the playoffs is ludicrous because this man deserves that. I'm sorry.
I get to swing it back to Jack if he wants to respond, or I go to Ben. Either one of you guys, or Marco.
Sorry, I'm just on too many drugs, I guess. No, I think that's fair. I think he's gonna be in that conversation. It depends on how the second half of the season goes. I just think, what would a proposed 8-man lineup looking at? Like, you're looking at the starting 5, Kyle, Duncan, Jimmy, Bam, and PJ. And then what? You got Dedmon in there. And then who are your other 2 guys? Hero, and who's that 8th guy, I guess, is the big question.
I think with that 8th guy, I think Spo is going to lean more towards a Caleb Martin, or if Victor, shows anything, a Victor, or even a Gabe. He values versatility and, not just specialist kind of stuff in the playoffs. So that's where I'm leaning at, because I'm leaning towards Spo's tendencies, and these are kind of what he's always been about. He's always preferred defensive guys or guys who are versatile. So I'm also not putting off that he's going to be in the rotation as well. He's going to be like the Eddie House that you put out there whenever, like what Jack said, somebody's not, shooting well, or they need a flick of offense or something like that, or they need a spark. So I don't put him not just playing any minutes in the playoffs, but when things get tight, I have a hard time, kind of seeing him fit that mold of the guys that Spoelstra usually goes to in the playoffs.
And I'll say real quick, to that point, the fact that Depot is kind of an afterthought there. If he's even kind of healthy, you have 8 pretty incredible players to put up there. So it's not an insult to Strus by any means. And if he finishes out this season the way he started it off, all bets are off. I just think it's a testament to this roster more than it is an indictment of Max, that he might find himself as the 9th man in a regular 8-man playoff rotation.
Yeah, I mean, right there to Jack's point, if you just go down the list, Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, Kyle, PJ, Duncan, Caleb, Strus, Dedmon, Gabe, Markeith, if you want to throw him in there, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 if you include Markeith, and you're trying to whittle that down to 8. Spo's not going to play 11 guys. So it's no offense to anybody, because I think on a game-by-game to series-by-series basis, some of these guys are going to get squeezed out. And it's no offense to what Gabe has done or what Dedmon has done or what Markeith has done or any of these guys. It's just playoff math. That's how it works. And over history, like Marco said, Spo has tendencies, and that's what he does. So I think it's something that we will talk about probably for the rest of the season, trying to do the math on playoff minutes. But it's something that's coming eventually. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just my thing with Max is people saying that we expected him, we had expectations for him coming into the season to be a 42, 43% 3-point shooter. And I personally was in a place where I was all right, If he can come off the bench on like 5-6 attempts, give me like 38%, I'm good. Like we saw him in summer league, he looked too good for summer league. That's how we knew he was going to be like a rotation level guy this year. They were going to need him, and he has responded in such a big way on that end of the floor. 42% on 6 threes a game is like ridiculous for a guy who was out of the league 2 years ago, didn't have a home. Like this is like I'm not too worried about the defense right now because like I just see how hard he works on the offensive end to just get his shots off. Like I remember the end of that Detroit game a couple weeks ago where like he played the entire second half and by the end of it was just so gassed and still hit the what ended up being the game-winning 3 in the end. Like as a starter, he's shooting 44% from 3 on 10 attempts a game. You don't find that. Like that's not something that just falls into your lap the way it has for them. It is ridiculous how they have just found these guys and that they are contributing in big ways and that this team is like able to rely on them consistently. And I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my head around it.
Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, just for my last point. All I was just trying to say is that if you really just look back, Duncan Robinson had the exact same thing that happened to him, like, well, I guess 2 years ago now, right? It was just like, I'm not going to say a rookie, but he wasn't the dude that you thought he was. And next thing you know, out of nowhere, homeboy just balled the fuck out. And you're just like, holy shit. And now he's actually starting in the finals, right? So if that can happen, right? Max Strus is I'm not going to say he's put on the exact same amount of numbers, but it's close enough. So it can't be unfathomable to think that, well, damn, can Max get those minutes too, just like Duncan Robinson did? Because I mean, if you think about it, we had Derrick Jones Jr. It was pretty much the exact same team when you think about the finals team that we had, as far as how deep we were. So to think like Max Strus and Duncan Robinson type thing, I can definitely see where you might even have nights where Max might even start in the playoffs, depending on the team.
Yeah, it's another interesting question that's been brought up on basically all your Heat podcasts and shows and stuff like that of what happens with Strus starting recently. Is he going to go back to the bench when Jimmy comes back? Is Duncan going to start? I'm one of those that thinks that as soon as Jimmy comes back, Duncan's going to the starting lineup because of the lineup changes. But I think you make a good point. I also would say that just remember that Max Strus and Duncan Robinson have shot basically the same percentage over the past month. Like Duncan's at about 41, I think Max is at 42. So let's remember that it's evolving a little bit over the course of time. Like that slump is over, and so Duncan's shooting is back. Back to where it should have been really from the beginning of the season.
Although it's been a while since he's played at home, though, so I wouldn't go that far.
It's been a while since a lot of them have played at home. But yeah, like I get the points that I think Jay's trying to make is you can see maybe Stu's being Duncan, and I guess that's for a lot of fans. They want him to be that kind of replacement, and I'm just glad we have both of them. And once they get to the playoffs, I think Spo's gonna probably go with the guy who's had a longer track record. But again, you never know. It's unpredictable come playoff time. Whoever's hot is whoever's going to be hot at that point. So it's going to be up in the air until that point. And, there's a lot of these guys we've not seen since, last year, like guys like Victor, who could change a lot of that trajectory of the rotation. So it's going to be, I don't envy Spo, but it's a great problem to have.
All right, we're going to keep it moving to Caleb Martin. And I know we've been talking about Strus there for a while. Caleb's another guy that stepped up in a kind of surprising role off of a two-way. It could get converted eventually. And let's start with Jack. Jack, what do you think about Caleb Martin? All right, we'll go to Marco. Marco, what do you think about Caleb Martin?
Well, I'm glad you brought him up because I actually wrote something very, very recently about Caleb. Actually, it was out today early in the morning. You can check that out over at 5musingsports.com. I wrote. I'm going to put it in the chat here in a bit. you can also check out the pod, 5 on 4. Ethan, Alex, Brady did an episode with Caleb. So check that out. He talked a lot about his journey and how he's, improved throughout the season. But one thing that I mentioned in the article was that how he's been the perfect kind of versatile wing that Miami's been looking for all year long, or for the past 3 years, really. They haven't had a guy like him since probably Josh Richardson. And I made this comparison in our 5 reasons chat was he's Josh Richardson without the too much on his plate. He can be that versatile 3 and D wing, and you didn't expect that at all. And that's probably why I'm going to give him an A at this point because you who can say that we expected him to start 9 games this year and be probably one of the best uh, wings that we've ever had come through Miami, and he's on a 2-way deal. You have to factor that in as well. He's not even on a minimum contract or a guaranteed contract. Although that's probably going to change. I expect him to convert that contract once the tax line comes up. So I'm very much in the realm of he's going to be in the rotation if he consistently hits that 3 pointer. He's made it very hard for Spo to not put him in a lineup. Like we talked about the playoff lineup. But again, like I said, that's all fluid and that could all change. But at this point, he's done too much to not warrant at least a look in a 9 or 8 man rotation come playoff time. So I expect him to. He's going to keep improving because that handle is my nephew's here. I expect him to keep improving on that, and I'm going to stick with an A- because he's such a versatile guy, and I'm so happy that they found him.
Yeah, you said it a lot better than me. I was going with a B, but for all the reasons you just put in there, and he's critical to what we've been able to do this season, and his versatility stepping in there. I'm going to swing it over to the birthday boy, Ariel Tias. Nikias, I also see you requesting, and I keep trying to put you on stage, and for some reason, it just keeps kicking you off the stage. So keep on requesting. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Always an intelligent mind and Heat basketball. But we're going to send it to the birthday boy for right now. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, on the Caleb Martin thing, I just think relative, the operative term during this space has been relative to expectations. And relative to expectations, Caleb Martin has been absolutely fantastic. Like, what a find for this team. This was a guy that, that didn't have a team during the offseason. He's a free agent, and you get him on a 2-way deal. He's producing like substantially above what you would ever expect from a 2-way guy. He's a guy that they're relying on. They're putting him at the point of attack, and he's been pretty effective guarding guys. I think in the what was it? The who'd they play last? Why can't I remember off the top of my head? The Atlanta. They put him on Trae Young, and he's defending the point of attack there. And I mean, like, he does a pretty good job. The other thing about him is like he's been so critical in that they've inserted him into the starting 5 for some of this stretch where they've been down some guys, be it Jimmy or Duncan when he was in the protocols. And in his 9 starts, he's averaging I think it was 15 points per game, 6 rebounds. He's shooting 55% from the field. He's shooting 44% from 3 on 4.5 attempts per game. Like, those numbers are just absurd. It's unbelievable value to get out of a 2-way contract type of player. He's somebody that, the handle is pretty solid. It's not fantastic, but it's functional enough that he can, attack sloppy closeouts, get downhill, and he's a really good finisher around the rim. I don't know what his finishing numbers are at the rim, but it feels like his layup package, his dunk package, is very solid. He's very creative in the open court downhill. If he's one-on-one, he's usually going to score in those situations, and he just gives them a bounce and an athleticism that they don't really have anywhere else on the roster, save for maybe when Bam Adebayo's healthy. So the value they've gotten there is just astounding. I don't really know how you can give him anything less than maybe an A-, and definitely an A if you're going relative to expectations.
Absolutely. Jack, go ahead.
I first have to apologize. I was sprinting to get my charger when you called on me. I was not expecting it. But I agree with everybody. Obviously, I think Caleb Martin has to be an A because, as Ariel, the birthday boy, put a million times, he's Mr. Relative to Expectations. That's his nickname. That's his alter ego. He's incredible. And I think if we're looking at past their 8-man playoff rotation, at the fringes, if we're assuming like Strus, Gabe, and others are in that talk, like in that conversation to kind of get spot minutes in the playoffs, like what a wealth of versatility you have kind of at that fringe to just kind of go. And that's kind of why I think like Strus and guys like that might fall out of the playoff rotation, is like, if you need a defensive lineup, I feel very comfortable putting Caleb Martin in. I know he gets the Derek Jones Jr. comparisons a lot. My thing with Derek Jones Jr. was anytime they had a defensive lineup with him, I just assumed he was going to foul somebody and just screw everything up. That's not an insult to Derek Jones Jr. I guess it kind of is, but like, I just didn't trust him as much, like to kind of make the right decision defensively. And obviously his measurements are completely different. I think just an all-around different player. I liked Marco's write-up on him a lot. And I think he really nailed like what he brings to this team. So, again, I'll just usher people to Marco's writing instead of saying anything more.
That's absolutely a good idea. Definitely check out Marco's piece. It's up in the stage if you scroll through those different tweets that we put up there. To Jack's point, in that DJJ comparison, early on, Caleb was all energy, flying around, which is great. But also at the same time, sometimes when you overextend yourself, and he was getting himself into that, where he was trying to get every steal or deflection, when he was trying to close out on guys flying past and taking himself out of the play, and he's much more under control now. And I think it's an understanding of the system. I think it's understanding how to use his athletic abilities, the strengths that he has there, but containing it so that he's not kind of having a negative where he could be a positive. Jay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I hope we are moving mountains to try and get Nekias Duncan into this chat.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
I've done co-host invites. I've invited them onto the stage. I do not know where. Maybe Tony's got his hand up.
The only thing that you can do now, Nekias, is just close the application and come back, or try throwing it into airplane mode to force it to re-engage the server.
Shout out to Dunker Spot celebrating their 1-year anniversary. Great listen as always. One of my favorite podcasts about the NBA. Go listen to that. Anyways, back to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. We are moving into the next person. I'm slightly afraid. The poll is up. We are going into Duncan Robinson. When I threw the poll up there, initially I took a peek. It was at about 60% D or F. I was ready to end the spaces. I was just going to call it quits for the day, take a nap. But thankfully, it has come around a little bit. It is now right around 45% for B and C, 3% A, 6% D or F. So, Marco, what do you got for Duncan?
I think I'm really rolling with the audience here. I think early in the season, if you cut off at the 15-20 game mark, you probably would have said C, maybe even a D plus. But I think he's warranted enough to probably be a B minus, C plus kind of grade relative again to what we're talking about. I think you probably expected more from Duncan, especially with the shot quality he was getting early in the season. But you also have to understand that he was getting different shots. The offense was different. He wasn't the same kind of he wasn't the deep offensive hub with him and Bam running as like the train of DHOs that Eric Spoelstra likes to run. But now that the offense is kind of back to that same kind of rhythm, and he's back to the same Duncan that we're used to. I think he's at like 45% over these last kind of 15 games or something like that. And he's back to the Duncan we're used to. But again, I think I'm probably going to be a little harsh and give him a C plus. I can be swayed into a B minus, but I really don't. With the guys that they have around him, I think it's kind of easier to swallow that pill, considering that they've been able to mesh out these rotational guys like Max, like Gabe, like we talked about Caleb, where you don't, have to rely on him so much to be that one shooter that you have all these other guys that can pick up the load. So I think with Duncan, I think we are probably going to be a little harsh on him. People are going to bring up the contract, which I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing about. He's not getting that much this year. I know it's a $90 million deal in whole, but you gotta need those kind of deals. That's just that's a contract you give out to a starting caliber player, and people are gonna have to get over that already. And we had this. You guys had that space that was like I think 6 hours long, or however long it was. And we don't have to reiterate this kind of same stuff that we've talked about countless times. So I think Duncan has been fine this year. He's been fine, and that's fine for so far. But whenever the team gets healthy, I think he's probably gonna go up another level. Hopefully, I really believe that because I think he's he looks like a different guy out there. The past times I've seen him, he looks like he's not thinking too much anymore. I think Adam Barai brought this up. He looks like he's had a different mindset since he started coming off the bench. Whether that continues or not, that remains to be seen. But I really hope that he kind of stays with this mentality throughout the rest of the year.
All right, I've got 4 hands up. I'm going to start with Ben, and then I'm going to swing it right around the room. So, Ben, go ahead.
I'm afraid that if I say something like talk about Duncan, you're gonna kick me off the space, Sean.
I will not only kick you off the space, but I will block you. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Say what you got to say, man. Speak the truth.
No, it's he has been really quickly, Marco, those numbers, last 15 games, it's 14 points a game, 40.5% from 3 on 8.5 attempts a game. So like it's coming back around for him. Like, my biggest worry with him earlier in the season was I wasn't sure how long it was going to take him to, like, because I knew he was going to break out of the slump because this has kind of happened to him the last couple of years where he started slow and picked it up, like, as the year has gone on. I didn't know how long it was going to take him to come out of that slump. And, like, they needed shooting. And the shooting was kind of abysmal at the beginning of the year, and I wasn't sure. I was like, all right, if he can't, like, figure it out and they still need shooting, it's going to be an issue. But, like, he's figured it out. The shooting has normalized itself. The other stuff has been better than it has been in years past. The defense, the playmaking, the ability to just dribble the ball. He's doing more, and he's doing more better than he ever has. And I'm happy with him. I'm gonna if the shooting can just continue to normalize itself, then no issues with him being around. I'm not gonna get blocked. Hopefully,
you're all good. Jack, go ahead.
I think Ben has a couple points there that I do want to key in on. One, he's a shooting specialist, start and end. So, like, that's obviously what people are going to judge him on. But I think the thing that, like, the Heat really like about Duncan, the thing I really like about Duncan is you can trust him to make subtle improvements to his game year to year. He's never going to be a defensive specialist. He's never going to be an all-around player. But he's always adding to the weak parts of his game, making him, like, more tolerable when he doesn't hit every three-point shot. As a defender, I think he's grown a lot. He's still frustrating sometimes. As an all-around offensive player, it's undeniable. Like, he's much better at putting the ball on the floor. He's much better at operating in pick and rolls. He's just an all-around better player. And then you can get to the shooting. In the last 15 games, the Warriors have the 26th ranked offense in the league. That's because the greatest shooter of all time, far and away the greatest shooter of all time, is slumping like just a horrible slump. Shooters slump. Even Steph Curry slumps. Duncan Robinson is in a class of shooter that, like, only Clay, Ray Allen, like, Steph Curry can claim to be in. I know we talk about Strus's shooting as being very great and stuff, but Duncan is a historically good shooter. The shooting's going to be there. He will slump, but, like, that's something you can hang your hat on. And I think, if you look at earlier in the season, you give him a C or whatever. I would say even a D, just because the shooting slump was that bad. And we even got to the point where even, like, the faithfuls had concerns for him. But, like, since then, he's been Duncan Robinson. I think, Sean, you've said that throughout the spaces today, and, like, you're constantly updating his numbers. If you take out that slump, which every player is going to have, there was also a new ball. There was a bunch of factors, like, playing into his slump, I'm sure. Like, there were things to contend with. Shooting numbers across the league were, like, pretty putrid, even to get, like, for, like, guys like Damian Lillard and stuff. He's been Duncan Robinson. He's been everything you could possibly ask from him. And it's just unfortunate that, like, the first thing everybody saw from him post big contract extension is him in the worst shooting slump of his career. But that's going to happen. He's bounced back from it. I'm not worried about him. He's one of the best things the Heat have going for him. And if you ask Hot Take Harry, he's going to get them a superstar.
We are going to pause from our regular scheduled programming just because some breaking news came out in the middle of Jack's great explanation about Duncan Robinson. I think him and Ben made great points. But if you see the Woj tweet, after 6 weeks ago surgery, Bam Adebayo is targeting a return on Monday against the Toronto Raptors, which is obviously great news. And it is cause for us to pause. And we have the Heat culture legend, the OG, Greg Sylvander, in here to come and talk about that. So, Greg, jump on. Go ahead.
Ha, liar Leif was wrong. He said all-star break. What a liar. Y'all should unfollow that fool Lefty Leif, Greg Sylvander. He's such a liar. I am super, super excited that Bam's recovery went as well as it did. It sounds like there was 0 setbacks. People within our network have even hinted that maybe he's been ready and they've been holding him out. I am super amped and happy to be wrong about this. The minute that I heard about the Bam injury, the first text message I received from a source close to the organization was, expect the All-Star break. So this is like a timeline moved up considerably from where I was conceptualizing. And I'm so happy to be wrong. Y'all know Bam is my favorite player in the league. So I'm coming at this full fanboy style. We get no ceiling back Monday.
So that's to the timeline comment about the timeline. That is 6 weeks exactly since he had the surgery.
So that would be 7 weeks from the injury. And initially we were hearing 8 to 12 was so this is a little ahead of schedule. And I think that like it's a it's nothing but good news, right?
Absolutely. That's, the best news we could possibly get. I also was thinking, all-star break and just being cautious about it, but they don't put guys out there very often in like a minute restriction type situation. Like the Heat generally, when they put them back out there, they're full go. And I think that's what we should expect from Bam.
Especially because he's been doing conditioning stuff. I think for a week now, or probably more than a week, they've been ramping up this kind of stuff. And with a hand injury, it's not hard to work on this stuff. Whereas a knee injury, it would have been harder to get him up to speed. But with the hand, I think it can do a lot more conditioning wise.
Yeah, conditioning wise. And, initially we heard, and I'll stop blabbing. I'm just excited because Bam's back, and that's good news. Initially, we heard that the hand would be immobilized for 4 weeks, and that's where the gray area was. Like, while that hand was immobilized, there was going to be question marks about, like, what it felt like when he got whatever that is off. I don't want to call it a cast. I think that's calling it too much. But the minute that came off, it sounds like he felt a lot better than maybe they anticipated, or it's right on schedule. So it's just really good news because that was like the gray area once that came off, how he was going to feel. And it sounds like he feels good.
It's also interesting because we never hear these
guys,
national
Jesse, can you hear me?
reporters like.
That's the first time I use this app. Since we were talking about injuries and comebacks, is there any status on Oladipo and his quad? Because I kind of feel like that's an injury that is testy.
If anybody has any information, I personally do not. I think it's a cautious one. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So I will say that this has been probably the most challenging year to receive intel from the team, especially from my perspective, not being close to the group on a day-to-day basis. But from what I've heard, he's really getting his conditioning right, and like that's a big part of this. And then they're gonna. I don't know that he's been cleared for additional contact. There may be some of you guys that have heard updates that I haven't, but I'm still expecting kind of February is where I'm aiming for with him. He's been hooping since December, but hooping and playing full contact are two different things.
Let's swing over to Jack. We can keep on this Bam topic. Just obviously it's breaking news and it's not something we expected. And I think it's something we should talk about. And then we'll finish up the last few players in a few minutes. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very excited. Bam is also my favorite player in the league. He's a special guy to watch, and it's going to be cool because they don't need him right now. That's the coolest thing. Like, again, they're second in the league in net rating over the past 15 games starting Omer Yurtseven, and they're about to add, their second best player to the lineup. I could not be more excited. Everybody should be super excited. I just want to beat everybody to this. I want to be the first guy to say it. Why isn't Bam being more aggressive? We pay him all this money. He needs to be more aggressive. I just want to make sure I get that in before anybody else does.
That's a great
You heard
point,
it
Jack.
here
I don't know
first.
how this is going to affect Omer's minutes, and that's going to really piss me off when Omer's not playing. Ariel, go ahead.
Man, what good news, man. Oh, my goodness. I mean, it's just I think that the time that he's had off is going to benefit him and this team so much going forward, man. Like the fact that, he's able to come back right now, just as the Heat are, starting this stretch of games in the second half of the season that is substantially more favorable to them than the first half of the season was, right? Like the first half of the season, they played 25 of their first 41 games on the road. And so in the second half, of course, that's flipped. They're playing 25 of their next 41 at home. And this is kind of the turning point, I think. Not so much that they need a turning point, but this is where I think, hopefully, the team kind of really starts to take off and make a real push for that 1 seed, because they've got 8 of the next 9 at home. You're getting, like Jack mentioned, your second best player back, and it's a substantial boost to their lineup. It's huge for them. The Omer Yurtseven experience was fun. I'm happy with what he's done for them. He's been really solid for the most part in the minutes that he's given them. But now you're adding your second best player. It's a huge boost. You're hoping that Jimmy's able to get back soon, right? He's been questionable the last couple of games. I imagine he'll be questionable going into tonight as well. So he's hopefully, relatively close to a return, and things are looking up, man. This is hopefully the point where this team kind of takes off.
Tony, go ahead.
Second in net rating, but 8th in defensive rating, with their anchor coming back this early into the beginning of the second half of the season. The stretch that, like Ariel said, is super favorable. The chance to dominate the East is right in front of us. We're second. We can turn that into a first overall net rating, first overall seed, real chance to open up a gap between us and Chicago and just start to take over the East with Bam leading the defensive charge again, adding that vertical rim pressure that we know he can get to. And now it's all about Depot. Now it's all about Jimmy's health and Depot, and where does that put us for this 8-man, 9-man rotation going into the playoffs? I think we need to host these spaces more often. The good news that happens every single time we do this. And the vibes are immaculate, boys. The vibes are immaculate. Bam Adebayo is back.
I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it's going to be an adjustment. But I think with Bam, he's such a perfect guy to pop into our lineup. He doesn't need the ball too much, but he's going to be the perfect guy to plug in. He's the last guy I'm worried about messing up the rhythm of the offense. Some people have talked about, we should play Omer with him, and I don't get that at all. Bam is the 5, PJ is the 4. Go argue with somebody that cares.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And we talked about this the other night, Marco and Gad and I. He's such a complimentary player that infusing him back in is so much easier than different styles of players that demand so many touches. I think that it's going to be a little bit of a rusty time where you're trying to get him acclimated again, but I think he'll come in pretty smoothly. And to Tony's point, the good thing is Ethan pays us by the hour, so the more you guys come in here, me and Marco, we're just getting rich. I mean, we will retire very, very soon if you guys just keep these spaces going on. So, Jay, go ahead.
Man, before that news came out, it was about to be scary hours for you guys, man. I was just about to lay out some stuff about Duncan Robinson, and then God had other plans. He had other plans. But I'm really happy that Bam is back. I think it's going to be really crazy to see. I think Jimmy probably be back either by tonight or by the 76ers game, most likely. But to actually see them at pretty much full strength is at this long into the season, of course. But it's going to be great to finally fucking see. About time.
Yeah. Anybody else before we close up the BAM topic for the time being? Vino, I know you jumped on stage. Ariel, I know you're jumping on your mic. So Ariel, go ahead, and Vino, if you have anything to say, go after Ariel.
I just want to talk about how proud I am of Bam for rushing back like this. No, I don't know if he rushed back, but I bet he saw that Jackson Frank. Shout out Jackson Frank. He's a fantastic Fantastic follow, but I think he might have seen that Jackson Frank tweet asking if you'd rather have Bam Adebayo or Jared Allen long term. Bam said, "I'm not having that shit. I'm getting back into action." So here we go.
Nah, for sure. I mean, I can't wait to see Bam back. Bam being back with this current lineup, the way they've been playing, I think Bam's going to plug in real nice and just take us over the top and put us right into the 1 seed conversation.
I
love
want to
that.
ask this to Sean and anybody that kind of wants to get into this. Is people have been, I brought up the PJ is the 4. Bam playing the 4 has been such a thing that has gone around Heat Twitter. I know some people have talked about, you need a shooting big. And the thing with that is you don't find those kind of unicorn bigs very easily who are also good at defense. The Brook Lopez's, or it's really just the Brook Lopez's. You can say Miles Turner, but Miles Turner is not as good of a shooter as Brook Lopez, or even as good as an interior presence as Brook Lopez is. And unless you find a Brook Lopez out there, Bam's going to probably be the 5 for a long term. Greg pointed this out, he has the same measurements as Alonzo Mourning, and Alonzo Mourning played the 5 pretty much throughout his whole Heat tenure. So I don't really see that changing. I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts on that, or if it's just something that you guys are tired of hearing about Bam possibly playing the 4. But I think him plugging in at the 5 for the rest of his Heat career is perfect.
To me, I'm one of those that's on the side of he's shown that he is a all-star level gold medalist at the 5. I don't know why we always want to change things with roles, with positions. He's a 5. He does well on that position. Can he play the 4? Sure, but he is superb as being a 5. Keep him there. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, here's the cool shit is that it doesn't matter what any of us think or what we perceive. The organization thinks of him as a 5. So that's where that's heading. It's all about like the perfect fit next to him. PJ Tucker is the prototype, but PJ Tucker has father time working against him. So as much as I love what he's done this year, I just think that it is probably not prudent to expect PJ Tucker to shoot particularly as well as he shot in his tenure in Miami for the length of while he's in Miami. Whether that's beyond next year, we'll see. So it's finding the next 4 that fits perfectly next to Bam. That's where I'm at. Like when I'm floating Duncan Robinson kind of ideas out there, it's to find that perfect guy to succeed, to kind of come behind PJ in the rotation as the 4 next to Bam. Omer and Bam, like I talked about on a 5 on the floor, I'd like to see them 2 play next to each other. That's totally matchup driven. It's like, okay, if we have to play against, one of those big front courts, how do you find that mix? But otherwise, Bam is a 5 and let it go, y'all.
Greg, who is the perfect 4 though? Like, who do you think fits perfectly next to Bam? Like when you see
PJ Tucker 5 years ago. No, but truthfully, so I think that's a really cool question and something to think about. It's somebody like PJ Tucker, but a younger version. So that's essentially what we're looking at. And I think you could probably.
OG Anunoby will be that guy in 4 years.
Okay, so then I was asked in a DM whether I'd rather have Tyler Hero or OG Anunoby, and I said Hero, but maybe I'll have egg on my face on that one too. But I would be looking around the league for more talented versions, more literally gifted offensive players, just upgrades as to what PJ Tucker is, but at the 4 and younger versions. So that's kind of where I would be looking around the league at guys that would fit next to Bam. And I don't know that any of those guys are particularly available. And also the Heat are not going to be pressed to make a move. Adam said this recently, and I think that it's really true. Like Oladipo is how they're going to frame their deadline move. That's just my opinion at this point. That's not via any source.
I want to call out the person who did ask the OG or Hero question. So if anybody's mad about that question, they can go to his Twitter and yell at him. And it's, of course, Giancarlo Navas. He asked that question. So if you have thoughts, if you're angry at him for undervaluing Hero or overvaluing Hero, go to his Twitter. Get mad at him. Don't get mad at Leif. But I think Harrison Barnes would be awesome. I think PJ Tucker. Look, like the PJ Tucker Bam front court has them. They were the best team in the NBA when they were all healthy. I'm sorry, like you can argue maybe they were the second or the third, but this is the best team in the league. Like I don't know why like Heat fans sometimes get their tail between their legs and they're kind of scared about like hyping up this team. This is a dominant team. They've been dominating without their best players. With Bam at the 5, even if you do think he's a 4, even playing out of position to you, he's dominating the league. Like I'm sorry, like everything's fine, everything is gravy. And to Leif's point, like the Heat shouldn't feel that they need to make any moves like anytime soon. They're rolling right now. Like don't mess with success too much. So yeah, as much as we can like quibble about what Bam's ideal role is, what his ideal front court partner is, everything with the Heat right now is ideal.
Go ahead, Ariel.
So I generally agree with just about everything Jack said. I do think they're one of the best teams in the league when healthy, though the sample size was rather small, right? Like they've been missing guys for the majority of the season. But as far as like, PJ Tucker being the ideal guy next to Bam, I agree. The one thing I would say to that, though, is like you guys mentioned, that's, he's not a spring chicken. Dude's 36, 37, and he's having to carry like, I wouldn't say he has a very big load on his shoulders. The usage rate is not all that high, but it's more so the minutes. Like if there's an opportunity for them to upgrade, not necessarily upgrade, but add another big to the front court rotation. And if you can roll back PJ's minutes a little bit, save him for the playoffs a little bit more, that's something that I would look into. I don't know if, you're moving Duncan Robinson in that type of deal because like who out there really is within that range of salary and in terms of quality of player that you would move Duncan Robinson for if you're looking at front court players. But there are some guys that are making, sub 5 million per year annual average salary in the league that you could probably package a couple of these minimum guys for if you felt like it was worth making that move. But in general, PJ's been fantastic. Of course, he's shooting 47% from 3 on like 3 attempts per game. I think it is like, he's been unlocked in a way that we've never seen. And my last point is when looking around the league, to Greg's point, when looking around the league and saying like, who is the perfect fit next to Bam? Is there a guy that, is kind of like PJ, but a few years ago wasn't PJ now, right? Like he wasn't shooting like this. He wasn't, having offense run through him at the elbow area the way that the Heat have had to do when Bam's been out, right? So we didn't know that he had a lot of things in his game, and that just speaks to the coaching staff. So when you're evaluating players around the league and saying, how would they fit on this team? Like a lot of them are going to be, potentially unlocked in a way that you haven't seen before until they've been put in this position under this coaching staff and under these circumstances. So I think that, that's something to kind of keep in mind when looking at these sort of things.
It's a really great point. And I got one more thing, and then I'm going to let everyone else talk. My last comment for a while is just like, and this is my anti-hope trafficking stance. What the hell would the Heat do if PJ Tucker's shooting fell off a cliff? Question mark. What do you do? Like, what do you do if you get into a playoff series, a playoff stretch, and PJ Tucker is no longer reliable from 3? Like I'm posing the question, how do you plug what he does? And so I think that does make for an interesting thing. You have bench strength from a shooting perspective, but do you have what PJ does? Do you have a replacement for that? Question mark. And I don't think that they do.
Well, it transitions perfectly because PJ is the next player we're talking about in our midterm progress reports. I do want to swing it over to Kenny. Kenny, you can answer that question that Greg posed. I think it's a great question. And then we'll go to Gad after that.
Well, I think PJ has shown that he is very good in the post this year. So if his shot is not falling, then he can back guys down. And I'm sure he has a mid-range shot too. He has a very good floater. And we have enough shooting so that if his shooting falls off a cliff, then I don't think it'll pose much of a threat to us and our success.
Go ahead, Gad. Who did we lose, Gad? Marco, you want to add to that or answer Greg's question?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that. I think that's where the depth comes in, and I think that's where you can probably slide in Caleb in those minutes, maybe if you kind of need a guy like that. That's what the Bucks did last year. His offense kind of fell off a cliff at certain spots, and they would always kind of put in a smaller guy. They would put in maybe Bobby Portis as well, but you don't have that Bobby Portis kind of guy, so you kind of have to manufacture those kind of role players, and that's what Miami's done this year. Is they've allowed themselves to have this much depth and have these kind of guys that would answer some of these questions that we have right now. But again, you haven't seen some of these guys in playoff minutes, so you don't know how they would respond to that. So it's a very interesting question that Greg put out there. One thing that I kind of want to add, if Thaddeus Young gets bought out, you sign him to that deal as soon as possible, because I love him in that spot as an emergency for whenever everything's not working. But again, I don't expect that. I don't expect him to get bought out. But if that were to happen, that's the kind of guy I would look at. But again, it's he's not a shooter either, so that kind of poses more questions than answers. But he's the kind of guy that you would kind of buy low on to say. But I think it's a very interesting question.
All right, Ariel, go ahead.
So to kind of answer Greg's question there, I don't think that there is necessary, like say PJ's shooting falls off a cliff. I mean, he still brings a substantial amount of value to the lineup. He was brought in here for his defense much more so than he was brought in to space the floor in any way. But if, his shooting falls off a cliff, or if he gets hurt or whatever the case may be, the team doesn't really have another guy that you feel comfortable playing at the 4 full-time or semi-full-time, right? If Markeith Morris, I'm not factoring Markeith Morris into any of my projections or opinions going forward on this team until I see him on the court, because I just have no idea when he's going to be back. But if you don't have Markeith, you've got Bam, you've got Dedmon, you've got PJ, and you've got Yurt in the power rotation. If PJ goes out for whatever reason, or his production falls off a cliff, and you're looking for another option, out of the other 3 guys, none of them are going to be played together under any circumstance ever. So I do think that, I like there is a need, probably if this team does have a need, it's a need for another option at the 4, I think. And again, like to me, I guess the easy answer is you just put Jimmy at the 4, you play Caleb at the 4 in small ball lineups. I think you can do that a little bit, but it's not something that's really sustainable. And if you really want to roll back PJ's minutes, I think that, if they're at all motivated to make a deal and look for an upgrade anywhere, that you probably be looking at low salary players at the 4, or buyout candidates that can, kind of fill that spot either in a backup role, or, maybe you kind of flip flop him and PJ a little bit just to kind of roll back PJ's minutes. But yeah, I don't think that, if he doesn't shoot well, he's still going to play. Like his shooting has kind of buoyed them for parts of this season when the other guys that are supposed to be your best shooters hadn't been shooting well earlier in the season. Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, those guys have kind of come around a little bit. So it's not as much of a concern from a functional, kind of lineup standpoint going forward to me.
Yeah, I think that's all great points there. And Greg poses a great question. And hopefully it's not a question we have to answer. That's the important thing. Hope we don't have to answer that question about PJ's shooting dropping. And maybe it could be that situation where Spo finally listens to Heat Twitter and he plays Omer at the 5 and Bam at the 4. But no, I'm just kidding about
no.
Just kidding. But that's a good place to pause our discussion. We jumped in here. We were doing midterm progress reports. We had graded all but 5 players when that Bam news dropped. And so we took a kind of a little break on that, talked about the Bam news. It got us onto different topics, and we're going to try to shift it back onto topics. So we were at PJ Tucker. We have polls up in the top. Me and Marco have been going through, giving our opinions. You guys can chime in if you want to request to get on stage and jump in with us. We're doing this, kind of at the halfway point, 41 games under our belt. And so we're going to pick it right back up into PJ Tucker. So far on the poll, 92% of fans have voted an A for PJ Tucker, which it doesn't exactly surprise me. Marco, what did you have for PJ?
I have that exactly. A. I mean, actually, no, screw it. I'm going to go A+, because I was one of the guys, as Ariel can attest to, before the season started. I was not overly enthused with the PJ signing. I was okay with it. I was like, yeah, that's a decent signing for Miami, a stopgap for that they can fill in. But I didn't expect this at all. I didn't expect him to be such a versatile player, a guy that they can run offense through. They can put him at the elbow. They can have him on the short roll. They can have him hit this floater at like an 80% clip. They've unlocked something in him. I'm never gonna doubt Spo and being handed a journeyman forever again. He's done this with James Johnson. He's done this with Jay Crowder. He even got something out of Luke Babbitt, which is kind of insane. But I'm never going to doubt Spo ever again when he gets a 4 on his lap that is as talented as PJ is. They've unlocked something in him that I never expected. I think not most of us expected it at all, and that's probably why I'm going to give him an A+, is because he's probably exceeded expectations on my book. I don't know about anybody else, but especially in my end, the defense is there. He's still giving you that hard nosed defense. He's still kind of defending some guards as well. He's very capable on a switch, even at his old age. He's still kind of slow, but he makes up for it, and quick recoveries and stuff like that. And he's very great positional defender. He sets hammer screens like they're going out of business. Uh, I love PJ now. I'm a big fan. I told Ariel I was going to get his jersey if he hit a certain statistical marker, and I'm probably just going to get that jersey now on my own because that's how good he's been.
He's hit that statistical marker like 3 or 4 times, by the way. So I need you to get on that, my guy.
You can't prove that.
Holding people accountable in here. It's finally someone from 5 Reasons is doing that. Marco's points are great. PJ Tucker has exceeded all expectations. The playmaking, the floater. If you thought coming in that he was going to do these things, you're crazy. I mean, the stuff that he's done on the offensive end, he's been as good as advertised defensively. The versatility to guard multiple positions. He is raising the level of other people's play with his leadership and leading the young guys, talking to them, holding them accountable when they make mistakes, yelling at them to get their play better. So I went A-. I mean, and I can't argue with Marco's A+. Anyone that's on stage want to jump in about PJ Tucker?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I mean, I feel the signing was an A. Whenever Pat Riley and the guys aren't like well hunting or looking for a specific type of player that's that in the line for a big contract, I feel like you go in for culture fit, and that's a great culture fit. PJ Tucker is someone who came in and was like, okay, I'm bought in at this point in my career and I'm ready. So it's a great culture fit. So that's why I think it's an A for sure.
Jack or anybody else want to jump on about PJ Tucker before we move it to Kyle Lowry?
I guess I'll add just that, like, I wanted to jump on right after Marco, had that fantastic soliloquy. I generally agree with everything that you said. I had talked about his offensive, what he's brought offensively that we kind of haven't expected coming into the season. So I was going to make the points about his defense, but Marco did that as only Marco can. But the one thing that I kind of want to get into a little bit is his defensive versatility, like you guys mentioned. I mean, just the ability to have a guy that, if Bam's out or Jimmy's out, like, you can switch him across just about every single matchup on the court, and you feel comfortable putting him on, say, the other team's 5 or the other team's 4 if you're playing the Hawks or if you're playing the Suns, because that a guy like Trae Young wants to run a shit ton of pick and rolls and pick and pops with guys like John Collins, and if they've got Clint Capella in the lineup, right? So you're comfortable putting PJ in that action because you know that he's going to switch, and you feel good about PJ on the perimeter in small stretches, of course, against guys like Trae Young and whatnot. So it's just a tremendous quality to have. He's just such an intelligent defender. He's one of the smartest defenders that I think the Heat have probably ever had in their system. I mean, his addition along with Kyle Lowry, they were always kind of like the Heat were always kind of like a high charge taking team. But I mean, like, you look at the numbers this year, they're just ridiculous. Like, they're more than double. They have more than double the amount of charges drawn than the second place team in the league. And I really think that that's, majorly due to the additions of PJ Tucker and Kyle Lowry. I mean, he's just so smart. He gets into position at the right time every single time. You switch him everywhere. You're comfortable with him on just about any guy on the court. And so, yeah, man, I think everyone made great points, but the lineup versatility, the defensive versatility specifically, is what I think has stood out the most to me.
Appreciate that. Ivan Cruz, go ahead.
Just want to know, is there a younger version of PJ Tucker out there that, would be available for Miami moving forward if ever they decided to, have the same type of player?
Desmond Bane in like 10 years.
10 years.
That just got me so excited. Be careful.
Thanks, guys.
What Jack was, or I think somebody brought up, when we talk about the OG stuff, I think OG's kind of that guy, because OG started his career off just a corner three guy who was a defensive specialist. So I think that's probably the closest. But OG's way more skilled than even PJ was at that point. So I really don't think there's kind of a comparison like that. Because PJ, he was a diamond in the rough, so he was kind of a late bloomer. So who knows? Maybe the next PJ like that is in the league right now.
There's a kid in Chicago. His name's AO, and he has the measurables and the same kind of like skill-wise build that PJ had coming into the league. I mean, he has a lot of pieces of his game that need to develop, but he's a cat to watch as that team develops. I mean, they're trying to win inside their window right now, and obviously, OG's a guy that a lot of teams will target if the Raptors ever put him on the block.
I really don't see OG as being the comp here in any way. Like I get that defensively he's fantastic, and you've got a lot of the same versatility and the options that you have with PJ defensively with OG, but I mean, like, he has substantially more offensively, and that's still developing on his end. So I don't really see that comp, but I would say that, like, the thing with PJ that separates him from these other dudes, like, for example, Tony just mentioned Ayo Dosunmu from Chicago, and the thing with, like, PJ is, it's not so much, it's not the measurables, it's not necessarily the X's and O's, it's much more so that the mental, like, he's just such an intelligent defender. It's something that's kind of really hard to measure and to identify in younger players, because that's usually just something that comes with being in the league, having more reps and gaining that experience. So it's, there's not, I don't really think, I agree with, I think it was Marco who said, I don't really think there is, or Sean might've said it, that I don't really think there is that guy right now. It would be pretty hard to identify. And that's why I made I jokingly said Desmond Bane in 10 years, because it's something that takes time to develop.
And something to that point, Ariel, if you look at PJ's like rebounding numbers, they look dreadful, like, in comparison to some of his other advanced tracking stats on previous teams, but they just look dreadful. Like, he's actually just boxing out the biggest cover and then allowing the other guys opportunities to get free runs at rebounds. And there's so many things that PJ does that's just straight IQ basketball that doesn't show up on a stat sheet, and it's strength and it's positioning. And that's a hard thing to find in any player. Like, PJ's long and he's big, but he just is always in the right spot. And no matter what, he's going to get his body on the offensive player's body and make that shot hard to make. Like the Giannis's, the John Collins, all of these centers are going to have fits against PJ.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys saw earlier, but Evan Massey tweeted out that OG for Miles Turner was being.
Oh, brother!
So
I did see it.
I'm sure Woj or Shams will be on that soon. But Evan Massey, one of the most trusted voices in the industry, he was on top of that. So just keep an eye on that. Jack, go ahead, and then we'll swing it to these other guys that are on.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're looking for, and everybody's touched on this, like the younger PJ, it just kind of ignores just how unprecedented a career he's had. Just, there's no predicting anything PJ Tucker has ever done in his career. There's no predicting this year. PJ Tucker, like, he was one of the worst offensive players in the league last year, if not the worst. Like, he was, like, just statistically during the regular season. Then he comes here and he's like the engine of the Heat's offense a lot of times. So just, like, pick a moment in PJ Tucker's career. It's unprecedented. There's no, like, comparison. There's no other guy. It's like looking for another Udonis Haslam. They don't exist. So, like, you can look for guys who can replicate this, and this about PJ Tucker, but, like, whoever replaces him is going to be significantly different just by virtue of, like, PJ Tucker's inherent uniqueness.
Spoke to him in the BAM role at times, triggering handoffs, passing out of the high post, passing, like, just basically anywhere. I thought what was one of the coolest things that we saw in the Bucks game, where the Heat absolutely boat raced them, was they're like, all right, where's Bobby Portis? Oh, you're going to put Bobby Portis on PJ Tucker because he's your worst defender on the floor? All right, PJ, come up here and triggering handoffs. Oh, Giannis is going to start guarding PJ because you're scared of that? Like, he just provides such a versatility for them, putting the ball on the floor as a passer, as a shooter. I've tweeted about kind of the hammer sets he runs with Duncan, and really freed up Duncan and Tyler a ton. I mean, he's just been absolutely incredible, and it's at times asinine to me that people are looking to replace him. It's like, what why?
Well, Father Time, like, would necessitate it.
No, but like this season.
Yeah,
no, but we're talking.
But think about Golden
like, PJ
State.
will not be this guy going forward long term, and I think the thing that Greg brought up originally Feels weird
Who?
calling him Greg. Sorry. The thing Leif brought up originally
Thank you.
was just that he's
Ridiculous.
36, that he's like not going to be around forever. And while you do have your ideal front court partner for Bam now, Bam is 24 and will have a lot of time left to play. And you got to kind of look forward a little bit.
Think about, as we say, trying to find the next young PJ Tucker. Like Golden State would salivate at the chance to get PJ Tucker in for their 37-year-old Andre Iguodala right now. And PJ's what, 35? So, I mean, it doesn't look like he's slowing down any more than he's already slowed down. He's playing plenty comfortable inside of his pace at the moment. So, as long as we can get this version of PJ, I think we hold on to it as tight as we possibly can.
I mean, that's kind of why they take swings at guys like KZ and Justice, and like they've been looking for that guy for a while. Whether it's James Johnson kind of filling in for some time, PJ, Ariza, Jay Crowder, Winslow, like they know, you know what I mean? Like it's very clear that there is an active effort to kind of find that 6'8" to 6'9" wing that you can play in the front court in between Jimmy and Bam, or in between whatever star you have in Bam, and that connector. Right. So, I mean, they're going to look, whether it's undrafted or whatever, they're going to keep taking swings at finding other guys.
Yeah, shout out to our production team. The timing of we just talked about Evan Massey. We were just about to talk about Kyle Lowry, and G comes right in. I mean, that's a perfect connection between the two. Very similar. You just sensed it. So before we get to Kyle Lowry, G, since you are in here, we were grading players. We were starting with Kyle Guy. We've gotten all the way up to PJ Tucker. And in the middle of that, we get this breaking news of Bam coming back on Monday. What was your reaction? What do you think about that news of Bam coming back?
In the great words of Jimmy Butler, you're in trouble, right? Like he's coming back. They have into the swing of things. They have figured out a lot of their off-ball stuff. They're playing 2019, 2020 Miami Heat basketball. A lot of shooters flying all over the place. They're screening, they're handoffing, they're just doing all the things that used to drive teams crazy that led them to a top 7 offense with only one guy who can dribble. And they're doing it again, right? Except this time it's with players that you kind of trust a little more, right? And once you get Bam back, shout out to Yurt, who's really held down the fort, Mechanic, who's just been stellar. You put Bam in that role, and all of a sudden you get a legitimate short roll threat who can kind of pick out to the corners, can destroy help, a better screener than Yurt and Dedmon, as much as I love them, a better handoff guy, just a destructive force on like anything we have in this league at his position with his skill set and his athleticism and what he's going to give them. And he's going to help their defense. Their defense has slipped. It's about, I think it's 6 right now. And it's kind of oscillated lately. And of course, right, you're playing Yurt and you're playing a bunch of, Kyle Guy, and you're playing a lot of guys that a lot of Tyler and Duncan. Dude, you trust defensively. Bam shores up a lot of your issues. I think some of those games like Cleveland and like the Kings, your defense gets a lot more shored up with him there instead of Yurt, who's, a little bit out of his depth at times. So their trajectory is only going up.
All great points. So right on time, Marco, we're going to transition it over to Kyle Lowry. For those of you that are just joining us, we have all the polls up in the stage. You can vote on those if we already talked about the player. We have 4 players left: Kyle, Tyler, Bam, and Jimmy. So the premier guys. So Marco, what grade did you give Kyle Lowry? Do not be intimidated by the fact that G is here. Go ahead.
F minus. I'm kidding. Kyle, it's a simple A. I mean, I don't know what else you can say about this guy that hasn't already been said. He's been perfect as the lead point guard. He's held up the fort. Probably he's been the leader of the fort right now since Bam's been out and since Jimmy, has been out of the lineup. Without him, they're not anywhere close to what they're doing right now because he gets them to. He's such a calming presence on the court. It reminds me so much of when LeBron would get on the court and every Heat fan would be like, oh, "Okay, we're gonna be okay." You kind of get that sense with Kyle. You kind of get that, all right, we don't have to worry about anything. There will be the occasional really dumb turnover that gives you a face palm, but you take those kind of bumps when you can because Kyle's been that good. And this is all while he's not even shooting that well from the floor. I don't care what he's shooting whenever he's doing the things that he's doing. And he's still such a good defender positionally, and he knows when to rotate. He knows how to help at the nail, when to, pop out for a flare, tag the cutter and all that stuff that Kyle's always been so good at. He's still not the same point of attack defender that he used to be, but he's still serviceable enough to where you're not, afraid of him out on an island. Uh, he knows the kind of defense that Miami wants to play, and he's such a seamless fit. And what's surprising to me, I was looking at his numbers recently, and he's actually shooting 72% in the restricted area. For a guy his size, that's actually kind of insane. It's just that, you would love to have more downhill reps from him, but again, he's getting older. He's saving his body. I'm not really too worried about that right now. He's gonna save his body until the playoffs, and I think he's really gonna unleash something in the playoffs come that time. But when you get to that bridge, you'll cross it, and I think they're gonna be way, way, way more than fine than letting him be the third option on the floor.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I was also an A. If you look at the polls so far, most of our fans, 70% A, 28% B, 2% C, right on par with what we're saying. I think the word that we've used a lot is relative to expectations and exceeding expectations. And the person that's driving a lot of that is Kyle Lowry. So while we've given credit to a lot of these guys, and they deserve part of the credit, Kyle has a lot to do with that, the way that he's setting these guys up. Ariel, go ahead.
Yeah, man. I think you guys both make really good points. I feel like, Kyle Lowry, I think I'd go A minus just because, there was a little bit of a slower shooting start to the season. But on the whole, I think he's been their most important player this season, both due to his availability, right? And that he's played in the most games out of their, main, their core 3 or 4 guys. But also just because of what he's able to bring to the table on both ends of the court. I mean, he's like the ideal quarterback for this team. We saw in the games that he played with Bam Adebayo, the way that, they kind of weaponized Bam in a different way, in a way that he hadn't really been used in the past, where he's, being led down the court and Kyle's constantly looking for him in transition and just, those hit ahead passes and kind of leading Bam into certain spots on the court in half court sets where Bam's being put in a position where he has to look at the basket a little bit more. I think a lot of that is really due to Kyle Lowry. And just kind of to my point about him being their most important player over the course of this first half of the season is that in the 23 wins that he's played in, the team has a 115 offensive rating when he's on the court and a 100 defensive rating when he's off the court. He's 5th, I think, in the league in assists. Like, he's just been so vitally important to them. I think, Tyler's numbers, for example, look a little bit better. Jimmy hasn't been, as available as Kyle. Obviously, same for Bam. I think if the Heat were to get an all-star representative, I feel like Jimmy's the most likely guy, but I think the most deserving guy is definitely Kyle Lowry.
Great points. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so glad Ariel just said that about Kyle in the All-Star game. And the impact that he has in the team is so unseen if you're looking at some of the advanced tracking metrics. It kind of looked like he's regressing in most stats, but he's really not. He simplifies the game for everyone. And I think I broke my thumb on the 100 button when he said, he makes Bam's game easier, because he absolutely does. It makes all the reads and thought that Bam had to make coming out of a pick and roll. He just has to make a quick read, 1 or 2. Is he rolling? Is he stopping in space? And Kyle's going to find him, and the pass is going to be perfect every time. And he just makes the game that much simpler for the guys who need to score the basketball. The ball always finds Tyler when Kyle's on the floor in the right spots. The ball always finds Duncan on the floor in the right spots. It's never out of position. It's usually right in the shooting pocket, right where they need to get the ball up to get a shot up. And he's pushing pace. It's what Spo's always wanted from these teams. We've heard it every single offseason. What are we going to do differently? We're going to be faster. We're going to push pace. And Kyle came right in day one against the Bucks. Then we saw the hit-ahead pass and the magic that opened up for Jimmy running the floor and Bam running the floor. And I couldn't be happier with what this guy's brought to the team. I think I would also give him an A- just because the shooting hasn't been there. But I will tell you this, the increased pressure that he's been putting on the rim lately, that extra step that he looks like he's found, maybe just knowing that he has to find it because there's no one else to play. It's just him. He had to hold down the team for a while. That's been really, really needed. And if he can keep that up where he can attack closeouts and get the defenses rotating even more than they were, then this is a really dangerous offense with all of our guys back. Really dangerous.
Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give credit again to the Heat scouting staff. We've talked about this basically up and down the list. But they found guys like Caleb Martin, Omer Yurtseven. People just came out of nowhere. And I mean, Kyle Lowry's no different. Like, where the fuck was this guy?
Jesus.
Sorry. Where was this guy before this? Like, nobody knew this guy's name. He was just wasting away
Diamond in the
like
rough.
in some foreign league. Like, nobody
I'm
knew
gonna
this
kill
guy.
you.
He was playing overseas, basically. And Spo turns him into, like everybody said, an all-star. And I think he might make the Hall of Fame at this rate.
Didn't he play in the same league where Omer had 96? Wasn't that it was like in like the Israeli B League or something like that? I saw somebody tweeted that out the other day.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, he was back. He was back.
Records. Like, you can't even pull Kyle Lowry's stats before now because it just wasn't that high of a league. Like, they couldn't afford notebooks.
Yeah, he was backing up. Yeah, he was backing up Anthony Parker in that league, if I remember correctly.
Shout out Larry Sanders.
I've heard there's very good footage on VHS, but they haven't been able to convert it over to YouTube yet, so the rest of us can watch it. But on that note, G, go ahead.
I don't know who would ever give that Barron guy a platform, especially streaming, but that person needs to be put in jail immediately. I don't know. I think that guy is just ridiculous. In regards to Kyle, I go A-, and that may be surprising to some people, but, coming into the year, I'm like, I want Kyle to shoot at least 35% from three. I think if he does that, I think that is a good baseline for him. I know that his shooting has always been kind of up and down in his career. It's been better as of late, but I kind of figured it would start to take a decline. Guys get a little slower and all that. And he's about at 32, 33. It's the only reason I just don't flat out give him an A, because I do think that, especially early in the season, that did hurt their half-court offense a ton. If you look at their numbers with Jimmy, Bam, and him on the floor together, it's not good. Their three-point shooting is really, really bad, right? And part of that is, they don't have, Duncan wasn't shooting the ball really well, and Kyle wasn't shooting the ball really well to start the year. So their lineup data is, I got to be honest, it's almost useless at this point, because when they were whole, they weren't shooting well. And now that they're not whole, they're shooting well. And I don't know how much correlation there is to that, but Kyle has just been the perfect guy. I've been saying it for years. Gets them in gear, is a perfect guy for the Spo offense, can play the handoff game tremendously, gives them a little bit of pick and roll juice. Their best, flat out point guard since I don't even know when, right? Just the dude is a Hall of Famer. He's a title champion. He's everything that they've ever needed. The defense has been sensational, and I talked about this on my pod yesterday. There was a play in that Hawks game where Duncan something up in transition, and Dedmon had to scramble to pick up Duncan's open man who was about to shoot a three. That ball gets swung 2 times, and John Collins kind of slips to the rim. Kyle immediately notices this play happening, just aborts whatever he's doing, gets behind Collins, really digs into him, and prevents a score that, frankly, Atlanta should have had. And a guy that size has that recognition, has that strength. It's those little plays that he does 10 times a game that save you, 5 points, right? And that's the difference in a lot of these games, right? And especially a lot of these runs and all that. So the dude is incredible. In terms of all-star, I think Jimmy's the most deserving. I think Jimmy's just having the best season of his career, and I think to penalize him for missing games when so many people have missed games is a little unfair. I do think Miami should have 2 all-stars, and I think that they're going to be, within, shooting distance of the first seed with a bullet, to quote the great Zach Lowe. So the fact that Miami could end up a 1 seed with 1 all-star when there's clearly 2 that are deserving, and we're looking at dudes at the bottom of the league like the Celtics and the Hawks, and we're talking I don't really think that. I think Kyle has outplayed so many. Listen, you look at guys like Lonzo that people clamored for. Kyle has outplayed him every time. Kyle outplayed so many elite point guards in every matchup that they've had. Has done a good job on both ends of the floor. Dude is a star. Dude's a Hall of Famer. P5.
Yeah, all great points there. And to John Collins' defense, he was getting pushed all game as he made it aware to the officials that it wasn't fair to him. So, and he may have slipped on his tears when he was trying to get that cut to the basket. So let's not be too harsh on West Palm Beach's own John Collins. Ariel, go ahead, and then we'll switch it over to Tyler Hero.
Yeah, to Gianni's point about, just kind of Kyle Lowry's intelligence and his toughness and his willingness to kind of get in the way and save defensive possessions a lot of the time. Like, I mean, he has more charges drawn than some whole teams in the NBA. So that's kind of crazy. But I do kind of have a question here. I guess I'll point it more to G, but I'm curious as to everybody's thoughts. G, as somebody who's kind of watched Kyle Lowry over the years before he became a really good basketball player and got into Heat culture shape. I'm curious as to are you a little bit worried at all about his minutes and his load going forward? He's on pace to play 74 games right now. He's played in 37 of the first 41. He's playing, I think it's like 34, 35 minutes a game, which is a little bit higher than I think we would have wanted going into the season. So how do you feel about that going forward? Do you feel like, you want to start looking at options or ways to kind of roll his minutes back a little bit?
Always a high minute guy. That's kind of been his MO. He doesn't have a history of lower body problems. It's not knee, and it's always like the hand or the wrist or some dumb shit like that, right? So I don't think that's like super wear and tear for him. Of course, at his age, you kind of want to dial back his minutes. I'm sure that once everyone's healthy, they're going to try to sneak some rest games in for him because he's just done a lot. But I mean, he didn't play the fourth quarter yesterday, and I think if they keep blowing teams out and if they get everyone back, we might see a little bit more of that. So I'm not super concerned with the minute load. I know that he at one point he was leading the league in minutes. They've supposed to really dial that back as of late. But he has an injury history, but it's not like the kind of lower body stuff that you're concerned about that it's just gonna the more minutes he plays it's gonna happen. It's all like weird freak accidents like his hand and his wrist.
And while Kyle's obviously playing extensive minutes, his usage on ball load isn't crazy. I think he's got like a 23-24% usage rate right now for this squad, which is lower than what
He's
normally
physical defensively.
Yeah.
He's just super.
He's definitely getting in you, obviously, and he's using his body leverage to do that. But it hasn't, to your credit, it hasn't affected him for most of his career. I don't know if I'm uber concerned about his minute load.
The last real lower body injury he had was when he fell on his butt. So I guess use the only term I can. In that Nets game, I remember
This team needs to protect that.
Nah, man, his lower body is very well protected. It's not something I'm too concerned about.
That's what I was gonna say. We keep talking about his history of lower body problems. I've seen that lower body. There's not a problem there.
Bam's back, baby.
This is amazing content.
By the way, who let Ariel the Knicks fan in here?
I am listen, I love the Knicks. I think the league should be terrified. I think they have a former MVP who almost beat the Big Three Heat in 2011. A couple bounces go the other way. That series doesn't end with Heat in 5. Julius Randle is better than Pete Chris Bosh. So I mean, with adding Cam Reddish, he's going to turn into Tracy McGrady in that system. And I think that's something that the league should be terrified of.
Clip it.
I don't know why Adam Silver didn't veto that trade. Me and Ariel were talking about this yesterday. It's just unfair for the league. And I do think it affects how Pat Riley and the Heat front office look at moves going forward. You got to sell high on a lot of these older guys because, I mean, you're not winning shit with Cam Reddish and Julius Randle and Derrick Rose as a super team in the East.
Don't forget about Evan Fournier.
Just to let everybody know, you guys are being recorded right now.
Let's go. Clip it.
This is all getting clipped. It is.
Clip it.
I fear nothing.
Twitter Spaces allows everyone to record now, and they'll probably shut that down after we waste 2.5 hours of their.
I didn't know that was a feature.
They just added it
Just
yesterday.
got added.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess they're trying to compete with Spotify.
Yeah, so we'll move it. We got 3 guys left. Tyler Hero is next. We've had the poll up for a little while. He is at 85% A, 14% B, 1% D or F. I don't know who that would come from. Maybe RJ Barrett fans or something like that. But Marco, what do you think about Tyler Hero?
I can for sure say it was probably Adam, who's in the audience right now. Shout out to not Adam, so as to not get confused. For Tyler, I'm gonna go with an A. Really, I would maybe go A- because he's been in sort of a slump. But I think I expected those kind of slumps because of who Tyler is at this point in his career. I wrote about before the season started. I was like, he's primed for a big season this year. All the stuff that he had to go through last year, he had to go with the short off season. He had lingering injuries throughout the last season. He had a toe injury, he had the hip stuff. Now that he had a full season to get healthy, to build up the strength in his lower body and his upper body as well, it's paying dividends. Yesterday he was cooking DeAndre Hunter, who is the Hawks' defensive stopper, the only kind of guy you can kind of describe on the team right now because that defense is terrible. But still, the way that Tyler has approached this season has been uh, about as well as you can expect from a guy who you're putting as much of a load on him on the bench as possible because he's not having to carry everything. Kyle's helped him a lot. Tyler's talked about this in his pressers. He said Kyle's helped him see the game differently, and he's helped the game slow down for him. Sorry for more Kyle Lowry love. I know G loves that, but it's true. Tyler's talked about how much he's helped him there, and you can really see the benefits of that. The way that he's reading defenses, the game slowed down so much for him. Some of the passes he was making the last game, I put a montage of it recently. I was genuinely surprised at some of the ones he was making and the way he was manipulating defenses. He still has the ways to go in terms of getting to the free throw line, but sometimes I think he gets kind of shafted on fouls. But that's neither here nor there. But I think Tyler has been perfect for what his role has been, and I think some of the All Star stuff, that's kind of a pie in the sky stuff. I think he's still probably a year or so away from really kind of being there, but he's made it hard to kind of ignore him, and that was his goal this year, was to put everybody on notice, and that's what he's done.
Anybody else want to jump in on Tyler Hero?
Let's do it. Adam, you might want to exit the spaces, come back in about 2 minutes when I'm done. But I think if I were to give him a grade, I'd probably go with like a B plus. The reason I wouldn't go A or A minus is, I mean, look, he's made substantial strides in a lot of different areas of his game. The ball handling, the jump shooting, the movement passing has been just a fantastic development that we've seen. Right, he's able to hit guys when he gets downhill in ways that he just wouldn't have been able to do. He hasn't been able to do in the last couple of years. And I was pretty down on Tyler Hero last season for the majority of the season, just because I kind of expected a little bit more of a step from him in those areas, and it came a year late. I understand the circumstances and the reasons for why. Right, like he had a shorter off season, and there were all kinds of other things that went on there with the trades and whatnot. But he's made just enormous strides. The one thing I knock him for a little bit is just kind of, when they've inserted him into the starting five, he hasn't played up to the level that you would hope that he would play up to. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that, when he's in the starting five, it's because a lot of the other guys, Jimmy, Bam, whoever, are out of the lineup. And so he's having to take on a little bit more of the playmaking load. And with him, he's shown us this year very clearly that when you kind of just keep things simple for him, when he comes off the bench and his sole job on the court is just to get buckets, look for seams in the defense and pick his spots and just score the basketball, he's been most effective. Now, so it kind of shows that he's, not really ready to have that much on his plate, which I wouldn't say at all is discouraging, but I mean, it's kind of like it makes you take a step back and go, okay, he kind of is this player now, but he's not quite that yet. So that's the reason I would give him a B plus and maybe not an A or an A minus, but he's been fantastic in his role. I think, you probably want he's got one of the more difficult, shot diets in the NBA. I would say he doesn't take a ton of really easy shots. If he does get a good look, it's usually off of somebody else's action. When he's having to create the look for himself, for sure he's made enormous strides in terms of being a tough shot maker, right? He makes a lot of really difficult shots. But you kind of want to see the handle continue to improve a little bit so that he's able to spring himself into better looks a little bit more. He needs screens quite a bit less than he has in the prior 2 years. And so that's kind of a testament to how his ball handling has improved. But overall, he's been fantastic for them. I don't know what else there is to say. I agree with Marco that, he's not going to make the All-Star team. There's at least 7, 8, maybe 10 guards in the East that have probably been better than him this season. Guys like Fred VanVleet, Darius Garland, who I think are on the fringes, probably deserve it more than Tyler. But he's been, I think on the whole, if you consider the games that Jimmy has missed, I think I would probably say that Tyler's been their second most important player if you factor in availability this season. So he's made substantial improvements. I think Marco's on the money where, you kind of think that in the next year or so, he'll kind of take that next step and then really be firmly in that all-star discussion. But for now, you keep his role simple, and that's where he produces best.
And, when you put him out the top of the zone now, he's starting to dive into passing lanes. He's making good defensive reads to block shots off the backboard, right? There's an instinct to his game that's really coming along. And I don't know if I wouldn't say that I don't think his handle is vastly improved, especially the last 5 games. He looks so determined to get to his spots on the floor right now. The dribble looks like it's on a string. His pace can be quickened, it can be slowed down. He's able to get to all the spots he wants to at ease right now, which is really nice. And it helps when guys like Kyle are on the floor to help him get there. Tyler's shot diet is extremely tough. He's shooting 46% of his shots from mid range, 36% from 3, 18 at the rim, right? Which is not typically where you want your scores to be shooting from for efficiency, but he makes them. He's shooting around 50% on that mid range long shot, which is like a good percentage for a shot that's traditionally not looked at as an efficient shot. I'm giving him an A minus, because I'm grading him on a curve of what I thought he could be for this team. And I thought that he would be the scorer. What I didn't think he would be doing is leading all scorers off the bench, right? Right now he's leading the league in scoring off the bench for anybody that has over 10 games played at that spot. So it's impressive, man. And everybody else is going to give better analysis on why he's so damn good at what he does. But bringing in Kyle, limiting his role, it's what young guys really, really need more than anything. Magnify their potential by limiting their role. And that's kind of what you want to see from all the dudes on the team. And they're all excelling.
Go ahead, G.
So Tyler's a guy that has given you something that nobody else does, which is a legitimate off the dribble pull up threat, like from range, right? And he's, I think, the most impressive thing he's done. And this goes back to last season, and I think back to that little stretch where everybody was hurt and had COVID, where he had a lot of on ball pick and roll reps. The pull up was really, the mid range pull up was really, really good. And he gets to the rim more now. His finishing is really bad, but he kind of gets to those spots in the paint for those little jumpers and those little kind of crafty finishes now that kind of just give you a chance, which I think is huge. I think sometimes people overrate his importance for the team. I do think that he's valuable as like a play finisher, and they don't have that. They have a bunch of dudes that are trigger happy with passes. And I think every team kind of needs a guy that's like, okay, I just really want to shoot the ball and I want to score, which he provides that like function in their offense. I think that, it's all said and done, he's probably their 4th best player. I think at times it looked like he was their 2nd or 3rd, but I think it's pretty clear that he's their 4th best guy. And he's been sensational. I mean, I think a B is fair, B to A. Really, he's everything that you could have wanted. I think he's improved marginally defensively too. I think the rotations are good. His on-ball stuff is always going to be a problem. And some of his lineup data is a little funny, but like the stuff with him and Edmond off the bench is legitimately scorching teams. Even still, right? They kind of come back and get right back into the swing of things. I think he makes like some pretty funky defensive plays at times, which is always surprising when you're a guy like him and you're just like, Tyler really made a play there, right? And it's just he's just that kind of player. So I go B. The playmaking has improved too. Some of the passes out of pick and roll has been really good. The reads aren't complicated, but they're getting better, right? The progression is improving. It's getting better. He's doing that. I agree. I forgot who said it, that he's just not screening as much in the offense. I think that that's absolutely true. And I think when everyone comes back, he'll kind of move into that role a little more. I like the Duncan and him too, man. Like they'll start screening for each other at times. And it's counterintuitive because that's an easy switch. But sometimes defenders like to hide, like people on Duncan and stuff. Not like kind of sometimes bigger guys, right? And I think Tyler does a good, like wings, right? And Tyler does a good job of kind of getting by those guys and stuff like that. So he's been fantastic.
Appreciate that. Jesse, you've been up on stage for a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that the expectation, or at least the trial, was that he was going to be 6th man of the year. He was shooting for that, right? So if he gets to that territory, then he gets an A. Also, I heard a hilarious nickname for Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, and Tyler Hero on the floor. What do you guys think about Tres Leches?
We love it. It's that
very
simple.
well done.
I think it was on the Heat beat. I forgot who made it up. I don't think it was any of the Heapy guys. It was a tweet
No, we
that
didn't
we
make it up.
saw.
No, I
Yeah,
think it might have been someone in our chat or someone in Twitter. I don't know, but we're like obsessed with it. We've actually collabed with the Deuces Podcast Network to bring back the dairy aisle. Shout out to the Deuces to figure out who is which milk, right? Because there's tres leches, so there's the Deuces is working on that.
Hey, something
Tyler's
else to
condensed.
consider with Tyler too is this you're going into an all-star game in the middle of pretty bad COVID outbreak. Tyler's positioning himself with LaMelo to be a reserve. I mean, if he continues to ball out, there's a real opportunity for him to grab that spot and potentially make an all-star game. It's not crazy that he could slip in as a reserve if someone gets injured or catches COVID.
I think that the COVID outbreak has kind of slowed down in the league. I forgot if it was Woj or Sam's today or yesterday. Kind of tweeted that the league is going to walk back the testing that they're doing because they kind of feel like they're over. So I'm not sure that we're going to have as many reserves as we thought, and everyone has kind of already gotten it. You know what I mean? So it's a long list. I thought it was interesting that when Lowe and Herring were picking their all-stars on Low Post, they kind of like almost laughed at the idea of Tyler as an all-star, not as a disrespect to Tyler, but like kind of confused as to why people felt that he was playing well enough to deserve it over, like you said, like LaMelo and other dudes in the East that are just really, really good that are producing similar numbers.
I mean, I'm sorry to LaMelo, but like Tyler Hero is on the best team in the East right now. So like, I mean, he's averaging 20 on a team that's like missing most of their best players, and like the credit
LaMelo's
has to
is
go
better.
somewhere. And like, I don't think it's that unreasonable that Tyler Hero gets that kind of love because it's like, does he deserve an All-Star appearance more than Kyle Lowry? Maybe not, but like, if I'm a fan and I'm choosing one person to see in an All-Star game, I don't want to see Kyle Lowry in an All-Star game. Like what? Setting
If you're a coach,
screens and
because that's what
drawing
it's going to come
charges in an
down to.
All-Star game? Screw that. I want to
But it's
see
going to
like
come down
tough
to
mid-range
coaching.
jumpers. And like, yeah, I mean Tyler Hero, fringe All-Star, but like Kyrie Irving's getting like votes and stuff. And I'm sorry, Tyler Hero is better than Kyrie Irving.
Gut.
We've got Kyrie at home.
Jason just jumped on
Kyrie with a
stage.
shot.
Jason, go ahead, and then we'll shift it over to Bam and Jimmy.
Hello. Just to let you guys know, I'm at work, but I saw the news. I was very happy, so I just want to come in here and just say I'm very happy about the news. But I'm at work right now, so.
Wow, that man is on the clock, but still joining space. Props to him, though.
Appreciate you working. Thank you for that, for coming in and celebrating with us with Bam coming back. So that's a good segue. Let's shift it over to talking about Bam Adebayo. Obviously had an injury, has missed a significant amount of games, but I have the poll up there. It's been up for a little while. We got 31% A, 56% B, 11% C, and 2% of people we don't give a damn about. So we're not even going to talk about them. So Marco, what do you think about Bam Adebayo?
This is an interesting one. I'm kind of in the same realm with the Markeith thing where it's an incomplete. But I think if I had to give a grade, I'd probably pick B minus kind of range. But I'm probably still going to be. I don't want to be too harsh because I know how important Bam is to the defense and how important he was early in the season to their defense. And I don't think people really understand how much better their defense is going to look once he's back. The Heat are one of the teams that don't allow you to get to the rim, and one of those reasons because they are so versatile with Bam being able to kind of stop you from running certain stuff that you want to run, like a pick and roll. Okay, we're just going to switch here. Bam's our Swiss Army knife that can guard 1 through 5. But there's also the stuff before the injury that I was kind of giving Bam flack for. He was turning the ball over a lot. His mid-range shooting numbers were down from last year by a considerable amount. But again, you really take that with a grain of salt because of how many games he's played. So you don't know how the numbers maybe would have improved had he played these past month and a half or however long he's been out. So I think B minus is kind of a fair grade for a guy that's missed a ton of games. We'll get to that Jimmy grade as well. We'll see, what we give him, but he's kind of in the same range as Markeith, where it's mostly an incomplete. But for the games that he was out there for,
I think he was good enough to warrant at least a B grade, but there are some things that kind of make you pause, but you really aren't sure with the sample size. I'm still fine with what he's shown this year. Like his down year so far is still him putting up 18 and 10 on good-ish shooting percentages. I still think he needs to improve on the finishing. Stop getting stripped when you're driving. Bam driving has, as Gad has pointed out, it's not pretty. Hopefully, he gets better at it. But he needs to be better in those circumstances. But I still trust him. Like Bam is still better than Jared Allen. I don't care what the heck everybody was talking about the other day. He's still versatile. He's still a very willing passer. One of the best passing big men in the league. He's one of the best defenders, 1 through 5. He's still the secret weapon they have on Giannis. He is the Giannis stopper for most. Everybody else in the league are looking for a guy like Bam to guard Giannis, but Miami has that guy, and you guys should be grateful for him. And I think he's going to have a great second half of the year, especially because he got to rest that knee.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go with, I forget who said it earlier, but Bam saw that tweet, got motivated, ripped his cast off, and that's why he's back early. Like that's what turned the tide and made him come back early. Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, on the poll I voted A. I'd give him like an A minus. I get why people are giving him a B, but I think yeah, he's incredible. He's a phenomenal player, like one of the most special players to like play in this game. Just unreal versatility, continues to add stuff to his game. Yes, I mean, like he's had an insane amount of usage in the past couple of years. I wasn't thrilled about him playing in the Olympics, but obviously he got the gold medal. You can't pass that up. The knee stuff seemed to start to bother him because I think everybody noticed right before the injury took him out for 6 weeks. He was kind of slowing down. His defense suffered a little bit. He was like maybe reverting to some not so wonderful habits. Offensively, there was like he suffered a little bit. So I think it's fair to give him an incomplete. Oh, I think it's fair to give him an incomplete there. But I mean, I think on the whole, like you can have your own personal expectations of Bam, and I think part of the reason I think Heat Twitter is harder on Bam than most players is because they do have unreal expectations for him. But like 18 and 10 is not nothing. I know some people wanted him to be like closer to 25 and 10. I think sometimes that's like just misunderstanding how the Heat offense works. I think that's misunderstanding what kind of player Bam is. Bam's going to give you nights where he's scoring 20 plus, and he's going to give you nights where he's giving you like a Draymond Green type stat line. And the fact that he can do both is like why he's an incredible player. Like it's not an indictment on him that like sometimes he's going to give you 8 assists rather than 25 points. Does he have room to grow? Yeah, absolutely. But he's still an incredibly young player. He's been incredible for them when on the floor this season. I know there was the Jared Allen Bam debate. It's absurd. It's Bam. It's Bam. It's Bam. People were talking about Bam being maybe injury prone. That's just not true. The numbers don't bear that out. The knee is a concern going forward. I want to see how he looks on that knee. How the knee tendonitis like flares up or doesn't flare up once he comes back to the floor. But, people forget Bam's a problem. He's the reason this Heat team went to the finals a couple of years ago. He was the best player in that Eastern Conference Finals. And when he was on the floor, when he was looking healthy and spry, this team was beating everybody. They had a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense, and they looked like the most dominant team in the league. So, I mean, any criticism you have of Bam has to be weighed in, like with the fact that the team as a whole, whether he's playing up to your expectations or not, has been incredible with him on the floor. And I mean, I think my criteria for him this year has been, I want him taking 15 shots a game. I want him around that area, and the jump shooting has kind of come and gone. As Marco pointed out, the mid-range shooting hasn't been stellar at times, and it has kind of dropped off a little bit. But I'm not too worried about that. The form is good. The process is good. The turnovers are a concern, but like as long as he keeps shooting and he stays aggressive, he's going to figure all that stuff out. And when he touches the ball, good things happen for the Heat, whether it's him scoring or him just creating space for other players.
because he's the kind of guy physically and talent-wise that you have to contend with. So, like, even though he's not a wonderful post scorer, when he gets a post touch, usually it ends with good stuff for Miami, whether it's him scoring, getting fouled, or making an open shot for Tyler or Duncan or somebody.
Love it. All great points. I apologize. I did hit that mute everybody button on in the middle of you talking. That was me. My bad. Kenny, go ahead.
Yeah, I just joined, my bad. But we talking about Bam, right? We're grading Bam still.
Still grading Bam. What you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give Bam at least a B based off just at least from the start of the year. You can see how confident he was just coming into the year, just stepping out, willing to take the mid range, because that was a big problem for me. Just Bam, he just always wanted to pick and roll, get to the rim off the lob, but try to just basically finish at the rim. But once he got that mid range going, that just gives me so much confidence for eventually the three. And he also, like, at the start of the year, he was rebounding like crazy. Like, he was going crazy. And it's insane just how he started the year. But the injuries, that also held him back, like the knee. So that's why I really can't go to give him like an A. If he wasn't hurt, I honestly have to lean towards an A, because just watching him, how he just impact the game for us. Just say one night he got to guard Giannis, and then the next night he got to worry about having to switch off on the pick and roll and guard somebody like Ja. Like, Bam is one of the only players in the league that can just do that, and I'm just ready for him to come back. I might have to give him a B, but if he was healthy the whole first half of the season, I'd be leaning towards a B plus or A, because he's been very productive this year. Besides the turnovers, now that he does kill us on turnovers, but besides all that, I've loved Bam so far.
Yeah, I'm also on a B. And I think the point about the turnovers, it's a give and take with his ability to create plays. He's such a good passer. And if you're going to expect your center to be a passer, he's going to have turnovers more so than other, non-distributing centers. So I think that's something you just accept as part of his game. Before we move it over to Jimmy, does Tony or G or Marco want to finish up with anything? All right, cool. Silence is golden. So we'll keep it moving. Our last player on the list. We went through every Heat player so far. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We're up at about 2.5 hours already. So Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler, the poll's been up for a little while. We're at about 61% A, 31% B, 6% C, and 2% again. I don't know who those people are, but we just don't give a damn about them. So Marco, let's start with you. What do you think about Jimmy Butler?
I think this is a no-brainer A plus. I guess you could knock the availability for like an A minus, but I'm giving him an A plus all the way. When he's been out there, he's been an MVP caliber kind of player. The numbers he's put up when he has played have been stuff that we didn't expect this year. We expected some people might have expected even a drop off for him to just stay steady from last year, but he's improved in almost every category. He's hitting his mid-range shot again. Last year, he was actually people think he wasn't because the playoffs kind of linger on their mind, but he was actually hitting his mid-range jumper last year. It's just continued on to this year, and he's been even better on the short roll. Kyle Lowry and him on the pick and roll is one of the best points per possession in the whole league. It's honestly kind of surprising how good Jimmy is on the short roll, but when you think about how good of a passer he is and how good of a decision maker, it really shouldn't come as a surprise. I hope they keep running that whenever he comes back. It'll be an interesting fit with Bam also coming back, but I think these guys are too good and they're too smart and they're too much of veterans to not, continue to have a good offensive or at least a decent offensive team once he's back. And the stuff about Jimmy stopping the ball, yes, that can be a little frustrating, but sometimes you need that. You saw that in the Houston game. Sometimes they would kind of waver, but then Jimmy would just come in and be like, okay, find me whoever is the weakest defender, and I'll put up a post up, and I'll get us an easy bucket when we need it. And that's the kind of stuff you're going to need in the playoffs, and that's why I'm not too worried about that kind of stuff in the regular season, because come playoff time, you need guys that can just get you a bucket when need be. And Jimmy this year, he's been an MVP player. I really don't see anybody giving him anything lower than an A. Even an A minus to me seems a little crazy, but I think A plus all the way for me.
Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'll fess up right now. I am in that 3% that gave him a D or an F. poll. Obviously, he's having one of the best seasons of his career. I am concerned about availability, and I do hold that against him more than I would another player because he plays in a style that like asks for injuries. Like, not blaming him for injuries, but that's just how he plays. Like, he's one of the most physical players I've ever seen. And if you're going to play like that, like, you're going to miss games. So there are small, tiny quibbles I have with his game. I do think if they're going to maximize this team, he has to start hitting some three-pointers. Like, I know the mid-range numbers are up, but, like, when you're playing next to Bam, like, it's really tough when I think, as Siobhan Veslow and Tiffany Meeks point out all the time, offensively, sometimes Jimmy and Bam occupy exactly the same spots. That's a tough one. But, you know, that's stuff they can figure out. I trust Jimmy to figure that out. In the playoffs, obviously, he's a magical player, and he has been one of the most impressive defensive players I've ever seen. It's unreal that he's been able to, like, ramp up that defensive pressure, like those steals numbers from last year when he was, like, kind of an MVP level player last year, you know. But, you know, overall, I think if you're being serious with yourself, you have to give him an A. He's special. He's Jimmy freaking Butler. And the B stands for buckets or whatever the Bulls fans say.
The G stands for gets.
Okay. Is that what it is? That's kind of stupid.
Jimmy G buckets.
I don't like that. Bulls fans don't know how to appreciate what they have. That's why he's in Miami now.
Well, their pairing right now is called Zabalzak, so yeah, I don't think they know what they're doing.
That's a disappointing answer right there. I don't even know where to go with that. But I am also going to give him I'm going to give him an A-, you know, just a little bit off the availability. But when he's been there, he's been great. It does bother me. The ball gets a little sticky when he's on the floor. You've watched the last couple of weeks, the ball moves so much more fluidly. But when you have a player like that on the floor, you have to understand like his role in the offense, and that's going to cause the ball to stick sometimes. So I went A-. Marco or anyone want to close up with Jimmy before we start to shut this down?
Well, I'll tell you, Jimmy was playing again at almost MVP level when this team was dominating. You just kind of year in, year out, no matter how much wear and tear this guy has on his body, if he's on the floor, no matter if he's 50% or 75%, like, you just expect him to take his game to the right levels in the closing moments to make the right plays. While this team has Jimmy Butler, and I know Tyler Hero's closing ability has been well touted this year, and he's been hitting all of his shots, but while this team has Jimmy G buckets, I just trust them to win games down the stretch because I trust him to make the right plays and to hit the shot that's needed, find the open shooter. Like, this is a guy that has the strength to get his body into defensive covers, start to move the ball, collapse it towards the rim, kick it out. It's just like any given night, he can give you 40 against LeBron. He can give you 40 against Giannis. And it's cool to me that we have all these guys like Kyle and Bam, these all-stars at the highest level, perennial all-stars. They can really just get into their bag night in, night out. There's offensive inconsistencies with Jimmy's game that I know none of us like. But he somehow finds a way to overcome that when the moment really matters. And, I mean, it's just a guy that you love as the leader of your team. And you hope he was hitting that three, Jack. He was hitting it. He was starting to take it a little bit more. He's shooting like 2 or 3 threes a game, man. You just pray that's real, bro. If it's real, the league's fucked.
Appreciate that, Tony. He's on the Biscayne Bay Brewing account. If you don't follow that, please click on that logo, follow it. It's the official craft beer of the Miami Heat, also a 5 Reasons sponsor. Very good beers, Tropical Bay IPA, all that stuff. Make sure you check them out. I'm going to swing it over to Adam. Not Adam, Jack.
That's me. I'm a little
You
tipsy,
got,
sorry.
buddy.
I've been in here too long now.
Yeah. I will say to your point, Tony, one of the minor criticisms I do have of him is down the stretch. I think in the long run, I do trust him. but he is frustrating sometimes down the stretch. I think sometimes he has the Mamba mentality a little bit too much, and sometimes the ball kind of sticks at him at points down the stretch, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But there are times where, and I don't put this purely on Jimmy, I don't put this purely on anybody. I think it's like just a team wide thing, and it's on Bam a lot. But like when people talk about Bam's lack of aggression, I do think some of that is on Jimmy. I think like it's on both of them for sure. Bam has to demand the ball more, but Jimmy also has to take a step back sometimes. And I think it's like not either of their faults. It's just a move that they both have to make in concert. I think it's the thing I compare it to constantly is post 2011 Wade LeBron, where Wade had to sit down with LeBron and basically said, "You're the guy, you have to be the guy going forward, and it has to be a very clear A B and not a 1A, 1B or whatever." So if I have a minor quibble with Jimmy, is that sometimes he takes over when the team isn't really asking him to take over. And sometimes that results in him occasionally shooting them out of a game. And in the long run, it's not a big deal. It's the difference between like 54 wins and 52 wins. So I don't really care. But I do think going forward, there has to be some kind of movement between him and Bam in concert to, both help Jimmy take a step back, play a little bit more off ball, and, prioritize Bam more in the offense. And that's a decision they both need to make together.
Well said, Tony or G. Any closing thoughts? Marco had to jump off for a phone call, and we'll close this up after any closing remarks.
Eaton 5. That's it.
I'm going to let James come up here. He just requested. So, James.
That was a joke. No, that was a joke.
No.
So,
I like that.
I think, it is Eaton 5, but I think with Jimmy, he is the best player on this team, and I don't think that is a question, and I think anybody trying to be cute about it is incorrect. I like what Marco said earlier. Jimmy as a roller, I think it's like 1.51 points per possession, which is the 98th percentile in the sport. One of the best rollmen in the league. Eric Spoelstra has done so many cool things, like empty side pick and roll horns with Jimmy as a roller, and it's just been destructive. Him passing out of the short roll, as Marco said, all that stuff. But what it comes down to is in the playoffs, he is their most hunty player, right? And when teams switch and when the offense gets mucky, when you need a guy in the half court to produce shots, they have a built-in option where Jimmy finds the smallest guy on the court. During their finals run, it's like, where is George Hill? Where is Kemba Walker? Where is KCP? And that is proven time and time again to be good offense, not just in the post like this year, but just in general, just him, dominating these smaller guys on offense, whether it's getting them, beating them off the dribble, whether it's putting them in the torture chamber, the turnaround jumper that's been fantastic this year. He is their most important player. They will go as far as he is. If he does not play at a superstar level, they're just simply not going to win a championship. And it's as
really
clear
quick,
as that. Everybody else. Yeah.
Before James goes, I was talking to Mike Prada the other day about what makes Jimmy so successful, and he was comparing him to a Diglett, which I found hilarious. But he's just this guy that can use his incredibly strong body to get underneath the matchups that he wants to target, like G is saying. And you know what that does more than anything else for this team? And sometimes the offensive numbers look really trashy, but we can still dominate quarters. It gets him to the line. It gets him to the line consistently, where other players like Harden and Chris Paul and Devin Booker are having trouble at the beginning of the season to get to the line to draw fouls. Jimmy had none because he gets there the traditional way. He just runs into your freaking face over and over and over again and uses his big body to draw contact. And that's the kind of thing, like G's saying, when you match up Hunt in the playoffs, that you can go to every single time down the stretch.
He is huge, and I think that I too would like him to take more threes. Obviously, the most optimized player, the 20xx of an NBA player is, you shoot a ton of threes from the corner, right? Like, that's fine. And we can do that, and we can quibble with that all we want, but, we got what we got. And the idea of they need to shift Jimmy around what they're doing now is absolutely asinine. They had a top 7 offense the year they made the finals with Jimmy, doing Jimmy stuff. And Jimmy can be, I do think that Jimmy should move a little bit off ball. I think they are a little bit more versatile with Kyle at the throttle, and Jimmy has a lot of off-ball skills that other wings just don't have. We said as a roller, as a cutter, you're just not as a shooter. And they can do fun stuff with that. But he's absolutely an A. Before he got hurt, he was an MVP candidate. He was literally, I think, third in EPM, I think fourth in Raptor. Any advanced stat you look at, he's one of the 5 best players in the league prior to him getting hurt. He's just unreal on both ends of the floor. He is still their best defender. I love Bam Adebayo a lot. Jimmy Butler is, if not a top 5 wing defender in the sport right now. Last season as well, I compared him to Kawhi Leonard, but with passes. You know, Kawhi couldn't dribble around him at one point in his career when he was with the Spurs. Jimmy's like that, but you just can't pass around him because he will absolutely get his hands on it. He'll get a deflection, he'll do something, and then that gets him out running. And you know how they are; they look fantastic in transition. So, dude is an MVP candidate when he's right and when he plays games. He is their all-star. He is at the core of everything that they do. Bam and Kyle and Duncan and Tyler and all these other guys are ancillary pieces, but the team goes as far as Jimmy takes them. And that's end of story. And he is a top 5 player in the East, maybe top 4, depending on how you feel. I would rather have him than James Harden. I'm not going to lie. If you maybe want to call me crazy, you can call me crazy. But after Durant and Giannis, I'm kind of shrugging my shoulders, and I'm like, I don't know if there's many people I want to take over Jimmy. I'm not going to lie. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I think that's a good way to stop. I mean, we've talked about every player. We've talked about Jimmy. We've graded everybody. I appreciate everyone that's been in here. We've had upwards of 150 to 200 people. We've had lots of people on stage. Tony's on the Biscayne Bay account. Marco Roma was my co-host. He had to jump off for a second. Make sure you follow him. G's been on stage. Jack
Can I say
Alfonso's been
something
on
real quick?
stage. Yes, G, go ahead.
So people keep following this account. This is an anime account. If you want basketball takes, follow at GNavis103. I've had 5 people follow this account during the process of the spaces, and I'm like, no. You're going to get nothing but waifus over here. I'm obsessed with Morgan Le Fay from Fate Go right now. So if you want Morgan Le Fay fan or saber, just follow GNavis103.
Okay, I think it's time to end. I think once it gets into anime talk, it's
Definitely
time
time to end.
Exactly. So we're testing out the record feature of this. I don't know how exactly it's going to work when I click end, but we may be able to replay this. I don't even know. So if not, just definitely check everybody out. Miami Heat beat 5 Reasons Sports. We all got pregame, postgame, halftime, all kinds of shit going on tonight. So make sure you check that out. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend, and go Heat tonight.